The moment the altar opened, everyone shoved forward like the world would end if they did not grab the shiniest weapon first. Swords hovered in circles of blue fire, staffs hummed with lightning, beast eggs pulsed like hearts, armor stood upright with empty helmets turned toward us. Rings spun in the air, each one throwing out sparks that looked expensive enough to make grown adults cry. And then there was me, standing at the back with dust on my shoes, one cracked starter jacket, and no party invites. Cole pushed past me with a grin sharp enough to cut bread. He had already chosen a black spear wrapped in red lightning, and the spear was floating behind his shoulder like it wanted to fight as badly as he did. "Dylan," he said loud enough for everyone at the starter altar to hear, "please pick something normal. I want to beat you later, but I do not want to feel guilty about it." People laughed before I even answered. I looked over the altar. The swords were obvious, the staffs were obvious, the armor sets were obvious. Beast eggs were obvious too, if you wanted to spend the next 6 months feeding a baby lizard and pretending it was a dragon. Then I saw the fishing rod. It leaned against the side of the altar like somebody had forgotten it there. The handle was wrapped in old gray cloth, the reel was scratched, the hook was dull. The line looked like it would snap if a goldfish sneezed on it. The status window beside it was even worse. Attack stat 0. Defense 0. Element none. Special effect unknown. Requirements none. Even the altar sounded embarrassed, showing it. Cole saw where I was looking and started laughing so hard he nearly dropped his spear. "No way, do it, please do it, pick the stick." I reached out and grabbed the fishing rod. The altar bell rang once. Not loudly, not proudly. It made a tiny sad ding, like a spoon tapping an empty cup. The crowd exploded. Somebody bent over laughing. Somebody asked if I planned to defeat goblins by feeding them worms. Another guy said my ultimate skill would be sitting by a pond and waiting for dinner. I held the rod up, gave the reel one spin, and smiled because the joke felt too easy. No attack stat did not mean useless. It meant nobody knew what had attacked yet. The first dungeon was called Mosswell Cave, a damp starter dungeon under the plaza where new players went to learn how to swing weapons without chopping off their own ankles. The entrance glowed green, the difficulty was low, and the rewards were usually so bad that people only ran it because the altar forced everyone to clear something before entering the larger zones. Cole walked in with a party of loud players around him. They had swords, bows, gauntlets, and a wolf cub that kept biting its own tail. He did not invite me. He did not need to. He made sure to pass close enough that his spear's red sparks snapped near my cheek. "Try not to drown," he said. I waved the fishing rod. "Try not to get jealous." He laughed again and disappeared into the cave. I waited. That was my first clever move. Everyone else ran toward the first monster room because they wanted to prove their weapons were strong. I walked the other way down a side path nobody cared about until I found a pond so still that it looked like green glass. Moss hung from the ceiling. Tiny lights floated over the surface. The water smelled like mud, stone, and secrets. There were no fish. I checked the rod again. No attack stat, no defense, no element. Unknown special effect. I had grown up poor enough to know that anything with an unknown label was either trash or a miracle. The trick was not guessing which one. The trick was testing it before everyone else did. I tied a copper coin to the hook, because if this rod had been left by the altar, it probably did not want worms. Then I cast the line. The hook flew farther than it should have. It slipped through the air, touched the pond, and sank straight down without a ripple. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the rod bent so hard the tip almost touched the water. I braced my boots against the mud. The reel screamed. The line glowed silver. Something heavy slammed around under the pond, even though the water was only deep enough to drown a boot. I pulled. A treasure chest blasted out of the water and slammed onto the bank. It was bigger than my torso, wrapped in rusted chain, dripping slime. The lid popped open by itself. Inside sat a pair of blue boots, 3 healing vials, a stack of silver coins, and a glowing marble labeled Monster Core. I stared at it. Then I stared at the rod. Then I started laughing. Not because it was funny. Because every person at the altar had looked at the fishing rod and asked, "How does this hit monsters?" They had asked the wrong question. The right question was, what counts as a catch? I threw the line again. This time I used one of the blue boots as bait because stupid ideas are sometimes just genius wearing a bad hat. The line sank. The rod jerked sideways. I yanked and a small bronze key shot out of the pond, so fast it hit the cave wall and stuck there. I pulled again. A sealed potion bag. Again. A goblin necklace. Again. A muddy skill shard with a crack down the middle. The pond did not contain any of this. It could not. The water was too shallow. The treasure chest had been locked behind a door in another room. The key belonged somewhere else. The goblin necklace came from a monster I had not even seen yet. That was when the rod's hidden text flickered into view. It does not catch fish. It catches anything with a drop table. My grin got so wide my cheeks hurt. Drop table was the invisible list of items a monster, chest, puzzle, or boss could reward after being defeated or opened. Every player knew that. Kill a slime, maybe get slime gel. Kill a goblin, maybe get a rusty dagger. Kill a dungeon boss, maybe get a rare core if the game felt generous. But I was not killing anything. I was hooking the reward first. The next cast changed everything. I tied the cracked skill shard to the hook and threw it into the pond. The line did not sink this time. It pierced the surface and vanished into a small black circle, like the water had become a tiny portal. The rod bent. Something growled on the other side of the wall. I heard players shouting. I heard boots scrambling. I heard Cole yelling, "Why is the mini-boss moving?" Then a sleeping goblin captain came flying through the portal, tangled in my fishing line, still holding a half-eaten mushroom. He hit the mud face first. I stared down at him. He stared up at me. Neither of us was ready. Then he screamed, I screamed, and the rod screamed too. The goblin captain swung a curved sword at my knees. I jumped backward, flicked the rod, and the hook caught the sword by the guard. One hard yank pulled it out of his hands. Another flick hooked his belt. Another yank spun him across the mud and wrapped him around a stalagmite like a green laundry bundle. The captain struggled. The line tightened. A small window appeared over him. Catch secured. Drop table trembling. I did not know what that meant, but it sounded rude, so I pulled harder. His helmet popped off. Then his boots. Then his coin pouch. Then the gold tooth from his mouth. The mini-boss went from terrifying to barefoot and deeply betrayed in about 4 seconds. When Cole's party burst into the pond room, weapons raised, they found me standing over a tied-up mini-boss while his own sword rested on my shoulder. Cole's face went blank. The wolf cub barked at the goblin captain and then hid behind its owner. I leaned on the fishing rod like I had planned all of it. You dropped something. Cole looked at the mini-boss, then the chest, then the loot spread across the mud. How did you do that? I shrugged, beginner's luck. That made him angrier than if I had bragged. He pointed his spear at me. That boss was ours. I looked at the goblin captain, who was still spinning slowly around the stalagmite because the line had not stopped tightening. Was he? He seemed very available. Cole stepped forward. I did not step back. That was my second clever move. If someone stronger wants to scare you, sometimes the best trap is letting them think it is working. Cole raised the spear and red lightning crawled down the blade. His party quieted. The pond room felt smaller. Hand over the drops, he said. I tossed the bronze key up and caught it. Come take them. He lunged. I flicked the rod. The hook missed him completely, which was exactly what I wanted. It flew past his shoulder, curved around like it had remembered something important, and caught the red lightning wrapped around his spear. Not the spear. The lightning. I pulled. Lightning peeled off his weapon like ribbon from a gift box and snapped into my reel. Cole stumbled, his spear suddenly dull and plain, a glowing red coil wrapped around my fishing line. The rod hummed. New bait acquired. Cole stared at his weapon. What did you do? I think I borrowed your confidence. His face twisted, and he charged again with the spear raised. I cast the line behind him into the pond and used his own lightning as bait. The water opened into another black circle. A treasure chest from the deeper dungeon shot out, slammed into Cole from behind, and carried him across the room like a delivery package with legs. He crashed into a mossy wall and slid down, blinking. His party did not laugh this time. The chest opened at my feet. Inside was a pair of gloves called River Grip. They looked like leather wrapped in blue thread. The moment I put them on, my hands stopped shaking from the rod's pull, my grip locked in place. The fishing rod felt lighter. I understood then that my power was not just strange. It was hungry. It wanted creativity. It rewarded weird thinking. Every object could become bait. Every enemy could become a pond. Every locked room was only locked if you respected doors. I did not respect doors. I cleared Mosswell Cave in 9 minutes without reaching the final boss room. I fished the Slime King's crown through a puddle before the Slime King woke up. I fished the hidden quest flower out of a crack in the ceiling. I fished 3 monster cores from a wall because a group of goblins was standing on the other side, arguing over stew. Then I hooked the final boss's club from 2 rooms away and reeled so hard the boss came with it, stuck to the club, roaring and confused. He landed in the starter pond, splashed mud everywhere, and looked at me like I had broken his entire understanding of reality. I tossed him the goblin captain's mushroom. He caught it by instinct. The moment his hand closed around the bait, my hook was already wrapped around his wrist. I pulled him straight into the treasure chest he was supposed to guard. The chest swallowed him. The lid slammed shut. The cave announced the clear. The exit portal opened. And when I stepped out into the plaza, covered in mud, wearing blue boots, blue gloves, a goblin necklace, and carrying a fishing rod that now glowed faint silver, the crowd went quiet. Cole came out 3 minutes later with slime on his hair and no lightning on his spear. I gave him a polite nod. He looked like he wanted to swallow a brick. That was the first day. By the second day, everyone knew the fishing rod was not normal. By the third day, they were trying to buy it from me. By the fourth day, they were trying to steal it. That was when Trent entered my life. Trent was not the loud kind of evil. Loud people are easy. They tell you where their anger is. Trent smiled like every thought he had was wrapped in velvet and hiding a knife. He led a dungeon crew that always returned with too much loot and too many excuses about why other players had gone missing during runs. He found me outside the stone market while I was trying to sell 37 goblin spoons I had caught by accident. He wore a white coat over dark clothes and carried a thin blade at his hip, not because he needed it, but because he wanted everyone to know he could cut them without wrinkling his sleeves. "Dylan," he said, "your rod is impressive." "Thanks, your coat is suspicious." His smile did not move. "I prefer useful people over suspicious people. Come with my group. You can stand in the back, fish up loot, and keep half." I looked at the players behind him. None of them met my eyes. That was enough. When a crew has too much money and nobody laughs at jokes, something is rotten. "I like working alone," I said. Trent leaned closer. "Alone is dangerous." I smiled only for everyone else. He held the smile for one more second before walking away. "You will change your mind." I did not. He changed his plan. Next dungeon I entered was Ember Ant Nest, a hot tunnel maze under the eastern ridge. Its monsters were fire ants the size of dogs, and its reward pool had ember gems, flame glands, and a rare queen core. I picked it because everyone hated it. Heat made people sloppy, and sloppy people missed secrets. The first chamber steamed like an oven. Lava dripped behind cracked stone. Ants poured out of holes in the floor, mandibles clicking. I cast my line into a lava puddle. The hook did not burn. It dove through the molten surface like it was water, and I felt the pull of something alive. I reeled in a fire ant. Then another. Then 6 more because the first ant had bitten the line, and the others had bitten the first ant, creating a screaming necklace of bad decisions. I swung the rod like a whip and smashed the entire chain into a wall. Ember gems scattered across the ground. That gave me an idea. I tied 1 ember gem to the hook and cast into the lava again. The line vanished. The rod bent like a bow. Something huge dragged me forward, but the river grip gloves locked my hands. My boots dug trenches in the stone. Heat blasted my face. I could have let go. I did not. I kicked an ant shell under my feet, stood on it like a sled, and let the pull drag me across the chamber. Ants chased me. Lava popped. The fishing line stretched into a glowing red tunnel. At the last second, I yanked upward. The queen ant's crown came out first. Then the queen ant herself came through the lava, upside down, stuck by the crown, shrieking so loudly the ceiling dropped pebbles. She was supposed to be at the end of the maze. I brought her to the entrance. That was efficient. She hit the ground, spraying sparks, and the smaller ants froze. The queen raised her bladed legs, ready to slice me apart. I cast again, not at her body. At her shadow. The hook caught the dark shape under her, and when I pulled, the queen flipped like a pancake. Her legs kicked uselessly in the air. The smaller ants panicked and rushed to protect her. I jumped onto a stone pillar, cast the line into the cluster, and whispered, "Anything with a drop table." The hook multiplied. Not physically, not like copies of metal. It became a net of silver and tension, each thread catching the little reward hidden inside each monster. 1 pull. Monster cores popped out of the ants like kernels in a hot pan. The ants collapsed, alive but defeated, their drops stolen before their bodies understood they had lost. The queen shrieked again. I tied 3 ember gems together and cast straight into her open mouth. The hook caught something deep and burning. Her queen core. The rod nearly flew out of my hands. The core did not want to leave. The queen clamped down. Flames poured from her jaws. My jacket started smoking. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I jumped into a lava puddle. Blue boots activated, turning the lava surface into slippery glass for one heartbeat. I slid under the queen's head, wrapped the line around her jaw, kicked off her face, and used my own body weight to crank the reel. The queen core ripped free in a burst of gold fire. The queen fainted. The dungeon cleared. And I landed on my back with my hair smoking, laughing like an idiot. That laugh stopped when the exit portal did not open beside me. Instead, a side wall collapsed. Trent's crew walked through the dust. No monster had broken that wall, people had. Trent clapped slowly. Wonderful, I was right about you. I stood up, rod in hand. That is usually where people should get nervous. He looked at the queen core glowing in my palm. Hand it over, then give me the rod. Nobody needs to get hurt. The players behind him spread out. Some held daggers, some held chains. One carried a stun staff, and the blue crackle around it told me they had not come to negotiate. I looked at the unconscious queen. I looked at the collapsed wall. I looked at the lava puddle behind Trent. Then I lowered the rods. Trent's smile widened because he thought I was surrendering. That was my third clever move. A fishing rod is less scary when you point it down. People forget the hook is the dangerous part. I let the hook drop to the ground and roll lazily toward the nearest player's boot. He laughed and stepped on it. Perfect. I reeled. The hook caught his drop table. He had not died, he had not lost a fight, but he had attacked me in a dungeon, and the world recognized hostile intent. His gear had a potential drop list now. His dagger shot out of his hand and flew into my palm. The laughing stopped. I cast the stolen dagger into the lava. The rod bent. The lava answered with every stolen blade in their crew. Daggers, chains, knives, spare weapons, hidden spikes, and one ridiculous boot blade burst out of the puddle and clattered around me in a storm of metal. Their owners stumbled, suddenly lighter and much less confident. Trent's smile vanished. I kicked a chain into the air, hooked it mid-spin, and swung it around the chamber. The chain wrapped around 3 players at once and tied them together. I cast again, caught the stun staff's blue crackle, and reeled the charge into my line. The line became a glowing whip. The next player rushed me with fists raised. I flicked the rod once. The line tapped his shoulder. The stun burst knocked him flat. I did not need to hurt them badly. I needed to make them regret starting it. Trent drew his thin blade at last. It was faster than it looked. He dashed through the steam, coat snapping behind him. His sword stabbed toward my chest. I cast past his ear. He smiled, thinking I missed. Everyone thinks that. The hook caught the queen ant's crown behind him. I pulled the crown across the floor. It rolled under Trent's foot right as he lunged. He stepped on it, slipped, and stabbed his own coat into the wall. For one beautiful second, he hung there by his sleeve, calm face gone, dignity leaking out of him. I took the queen core, tied it to the hook, and cast straight up through the cracked ceiling. The line vanished into the dungeon roof. A moment later, the city guard's alarm bell rang above us. Trent looked up. What did you do? I caught attention. The ceiling burst open as the exit portal finally formed, but it was not just an exit. It opened under the guard platform in the plaza, because the queen core was valuable enough to register as a dungeon clear reward. The portal dragged every hostile player, tangled in my line with it. Trent, his crew, the stolen weapons, and the queen crown all shot upward. We landed in the plaza in front of half the city. Trent tried to stand, but I flicked the rod and caught his sword's drop identity. The blade popped out of his hand and landed at the feet of the guards. Then my line yanked open the pouches hidden inside his coat. Stolen monster cores spilled across the stones. Rings, quest items, a pet egg with somebody else's initials burned into the shell. A dozen proof marks from players who had gone into dungeons with him and come out empty-handed. The guards did not need paperwork, they needed eyes. Trent tried to speak. I cast the line one last time and hooked the smugness right out of his posture, not literally maybe. But when the hook tugged his coat collar and dragged him into the stone jail below the plaza, he definitely looked less poetic. The crowd cheered. Not for me at first, they cheered because people love watching a predator fall into a hole. Then someone shouted my name. Then someone else did. By sunset, nobody called the fishing rod a stick anymore. By sunrise, people were calling it unfair. They were not wronged. The rod changed after Ember Ant Nest. The gray cloth around the handle burned away, revealing dark wood with silver scales beneath. The reel had new grooves in it, and each groove held a tiny glowing symbol for something I had caught. Gesto, cord, kaiwa, weapon, monster, attention. That last one made me laugh until I almost fell off the inn roof. The rod was not leveling like a sword, it was remembering categories. Every time I caught a new kind of thing, it learned the concept. Once it learned a concept, I could bait for it again. That meant I did not just have a loot tool. I had a concept hook. So I trained like an absolute menace. I went to the smallest slime field outside the city and spent 3 hours catching things no sane player would think to catch. I caught bounce from a slime and used it to jump over a tree. I caught stickiness from another slime and used it to glue a rude player's boots to the ground when he tried to trip me. I caught a goblin's shout and stored it in the reel. Later, I released it behind Cole while he was drinking water, and he sprayed half the cup through his nose. That one did not make me stronger, but it improved my mood. Serena found me that afternoon. She was the only weaponsmith in the stone market who did not laugh when I asked if she could repair a fishing rod. She had short, dark hair, arms covered in burn scars from her forge, and a stare that made people confess things before she asked. She studied the rod for a long time, then looked at me like I had brought her a live snake and called it a necklace. "This is not a starter item," she said. "I picked it at the starter altar." "That does not make it a starter item. That makes the altar irresponsible." I liked her immediately. She did not ask to join me. She did not ask for loot. She asked questions about the rod's behavior, wrote nothing down, and touched the reel with careful fingers. "It is not pulling objects," she said. "It is pulling claim." I blinked. Claim. Ownership, reward, target, identity. Whatever the world thinks belongs to something, your rod can touch. That is why it can steal drops. That is why it can pull a boss from another room. You are not dragging the body first. You are dragging what the body is supposed to become after defeat. That sounded smarter than anything I had said, so I nodded like I had known it already. Serena tapped the dull hook. "The weak part is here. This hook was made for small claims. You keep yanking bosses through walls, it will break." That was bad. Then she smiled. That was worse in the best way. "Bring me 3 things," she said. "A fang from something that has never bitten you, a key from a door you never opened, and a song from a monster with no mouth." I stared at her. "You are enjoying this." "Deeply." I got the fang first. There was a cave wolf boss in Frostpine Hollow, a white beast with ice along its spine. Most players fought it by dodging its charge and cutting its legs. I did not fight it. I stood outside the den, tied a strip of bacon to my hook, and cast into a snowbank. The line shot under the snow. The wolf smelled the bacon from inside the den and bit the air. The hook caught the idea of its bite before the teeth touched anything. I reeled in a crystal fang that had never bitten me. The wolf came after it, furious. I cast the fang back into the snow and caught its collar of frost. One pull peeled the ice off its spine and wrapped it around my line. The second pull wrapped the wolf in its own cold. It slid into a tree and knocked itself out. I left the bacon behind because I respected effort. The key came from a sealed library dungeon where the doors changed positions when nobody looked. Everyone hated it because it was full of floating books that slapped people in the face. I loved it because every locked door was basically a pond with hinges. I found the largest door, faced away from it, and cast the line over my shoulder. The hook tapped the keyhole. The door tried to move. I caught its destination. The whole door ripped out of the wall and skidded across the floor, still locked, deeply committed to being annoying somewhere else. Behind it was another door. So I fished that one too. By the time I found the key, I had a stack of 7 doors, a pile of angry books, and a headache shaped like the alphabet. The key had never opened a door because I had removed every door before giving it the chance. The last ingredient was the song. A monster with no mouth lived in the Belgrave ruins. It was called a silent wraith, a floating shape made of torn cloth and cold light. It attacked by making bells ring inside your skull until you forgot which direction your hands were. It had no mouths. It still had a song. I entered the ruins with wax in my ears and a cooking pot on my head because preparation does not have to look heroic. The wraith drifted above a broken altar. Bells rang without moving. My vision shook. I nearly walked into a wall. I cast the line into the sound. Not at the monster, not at the altar, at the empty space where the ringing hurt most. The hook vanished. The rod bent gently like I had hooked a feather. Then the line began to vibrate. I reeled slowly, too fast and the sound cut my fingers, too slow and the wraith crawled closer, claws raised. The song came out of the air as a silver thread. The wraith lunged. I swung the cooking pot off my head and used it as bait. The wraith attacked the pot because apparently even ancient silent ghosts hate bad cookware. The hook caught its sleeve. I pulled, spun, and wrapped the ghost around the broken bell tower until it looked like laundry on a windy day. The song kept vibrating in my hand. When I brought the 3 ingredients to Serena, she did not smile. She grinned. That worried me more than monsters did. She melted the fang, key, and song together in a forge flame that burned blue and made no heat. She threaded the molten sound through the hook, folded the key's refusal into the barb, and sharpened the fang into a curve so thin I could barely see the edge. When she was done, the hook looked almost the same. That was how I knew it was dangerous. "Try not to pull the moon down," she said. No promises. The upgraded hook had one new effect. If the target had a reward, the hook could find a pass. Not an obvious path, not a legal path, not a fair path. A path. The first time I used it, I cast into a dry well in the city center and caught a chest from a dungeon I had not entered yet. The chest screamed. Chests are not supposed to scream, so that was new. I reeled it up anyway. It had teeth. A mimic. It tried to bite my arm, so I baited the hook with one of its own teeth and cast into its mouth. The line wrapped around its treasure instinct. I pulled out 3 gold coins, a poisoned dagger, and a half-digested boot. The mimic snapped at me again. I pulled out its hunger. It became a very confused wooden box. I sold it to Serena as forge storage. She asked no questions. After that, my climb turned ugly. Power does not only attract fans, it attracts people who think your success is theft because they did not get to steal it first. Cole challenged me in the public arena. Not a friendly match, not a clean test. He wanted the entire plaza watching so he could prove his legendary spear was still better than my fishing rod. I accepted because I am petty. The arena was a stone circle surrounded by seats. No lethal damage, no outside help, no hiding behind dungeon rules, just weapons and skill. Cole walked in wearing a red cloak and a grin he had practiced in polished glass. The spear had its lightning back now, brighter than before. He had spent days hunting thunder lizards to restore it. I walked in with my fishing rod, a bucket, 3 coins, and the mimic box. The crowd laughed again, but not as confidently. Cole pointed his spear at me. "No pawns here." I held up the bucket. I brought one. He frowned. The match began. Cole moved like a red comet. His spear flashed toward my ribs fast enough to leave sparks in the air. I tipped the bucket over. A sad puddle spilled onto the stone. I cast into it. The hook vanished. Cole's spear hit my afterimage because I had hooked the arena's shadow and pulled myself 2 steps sideways. The crowd gasped. Cole spun, thrust again, and released a bolt of lightning shaped like a dragon. I cast into the lightning dragon's mouth. The hook caught its thunder tooth. I reeled. The lightning dragon folded into a glowing ball and dropped into my bucket with a splash that made no sense. Cole froze. I kicked the bucket toward him. The ball exploded upward, turning into a tiny storm cloud directly over his head. Rain fell only on him. Then lightning struck his cloak. He yelped and slapped smoke off his shoulder. The crowd laughed. That was dangerous for him. People like Cole can survive losing. They cannot survive being funny. He roared and activated his spear's strongest skill, a red spiral thrust that drilled through the arena floor as he charged. I opened the mimic box. Mimic, now mostly reformed and very angry at me, saw Cole rushing and did what mimics do. It opened its mouth. I cast the line through the box. The hook found the path from hunger to weapon to hand. When Cole thrust, his spear tip went into the mimic's mouth. The mimic bit down. Cole tried to pull back. I reeled. Mimic boxed the spear and Cole all shot toward me. I ducked. They flew over my head. Cole crashed into the arena wall with his spear stuck in a box that refused to let go. I walked over, cast the hook, and caught his next attack before he used it. That was the real trick. A strong player is most dangerous at the moment before they move, when the skill is already chosen but not yet released. That moment has weight, it has direction, it has a drop table of possible consequences. I hooked the consequence. Cole's body jerked forward without his permission. His half-formed spear strike fired straight into the ground at his own feet, launching him into the air. I cast upward and caught his red cloak. The crowd saw me reel Cole around the arena like a kite. He yelled, I waved. The mimic box held his spear like a dog with a bone. When I finally set him down, he was dizzy, soaked, smoking, and missing one boot. The arena announced my win. I tossed him the boot. He did not catch it. After that, Cole stopped laughing at me. He did not become my friend, not then. Pride is a boss with too many health bars, but he stopped pretending I was weak, and sometimes that is the first crack in the wall. My rank climbed, dungeons opened. The starter city became too small for me. Northern Gate led to the Glasswood, a forest where the trees were transparent and the monsters hid inside bent reflections of leaves, not copies. Just annoying transparent bugs and deer with crystal horns that hit harder than guilt. Main dungeon there was Crystal Stag Labyrinth. Its boss guarded a horn that could amplify any weapon's special effect. Every guild wanted it. Trent would have wanted it too, but he was still in jail, probably trying to smile his way through stone bars. I entered alone. At least I thought I did. Halfway through the maze, I realized I was being followed by 3 player killers from an unnamed crew that had been robbing solo players in the Glasswood. They were careful, no talking, no heavy steps. They waited until I reached a clearing with crystal trees on all sides, then blocked the exits. One held a curved sword, one held throwing needles, one held a net weighted with hooks. I raised a hand. Before we start, I should warn you that nets are kind of my thing. The net flew. I cast into it. The fishing hook caught the net's knot identity, the one point holding the whole thing together. I pulled, and the net unraveled midair into a long rope. I spun the rod, wrapped the rope around the needle thrower, and yanked him into the sword user. The third tried to run. I cast into his shadow and hooked his escape route. The path under his feet folded like a rug. He slipped, rolled, and landed face first in a bush that immediately tried to eat him because the Glasswood had opinions. I could have finished them there. Instead, I tied their stolen weapons together, cast the bundle into a crystal stream, and fished up every item they had taken from other players in the last week. Hacks burst open, rings flew out, quest stones rolled across the grass, coins spilled everywhere. The 3 thieves stared like I had pulled their secrets out by the roots. The guards had a station at the forest gate. I dragged the thieves there by their own net while the stolen goods floated behind me in a line, each item hooked by a silver thread. One of the guards asked how I caught all of it. I said bad people have messy drop tables. That phrase spread faster than any rumor before it. By evening, players were whispering that attacking me gave you a drop table. They were right. And that made evil people hesitate. Good. Hesitation is a door. I kick doors. The Crystal Stag Labyrinth tried to confuse me with beauty. Transparent trees rose like frozen water. Paths split and merged. Crystal birds sang notes that turned into sharp little arrows. The deeper I went, the more the maze shifted, but it did not shift because of me. It shifted for everyone. It was built to make players chase reflections until they ran out of healing vials. I did not chase anything. I fished. At every intersection, I cast the line into the ground and hooked the reward scent. The rod tugged toward paths with treasure, cores, hidden rooms, and boss pressure. If the line pulled gently, it meant common loot. If it shook, rare. If it tried to drag me through a tree, boss. So I let it. The hook found a path through the root network, and I yanked myself sideways into a secret chamber where a crystal stag, the size of a carriage, slept under a moonbeam. Its antlers were a forest by themselves. The horn I needed sat at the center, glowing gold. I stepped on a twig. The stag woke. Its eyes opened like blue lanterns. The fight started with light. Beams shot from its antlers, cutting through crystal trunks. I rolled, cast, missed, rolled again, and felt a beam slice the air above my hair. The stag moved too cleanly. Every leap left afterimages in the crystal walls. Every stomp turned the ground into spikes. I could not overpower it, so I insulted its loot. I tied a common goblin spoon to my hook and cast at the golden horn. The stag froze. You could feel its pride taking damage. The spoon clanged against its antler. The hook wrapped around the horn base. The stag thrashed and I flew into the air, still holding the rod. The line swung me around its antlers like a slingshot. Below me, crystal spikes erupted. Above me, the ceiling glittered. I saw the pattern. The stag was protecting the horn, not its body. So I stopped pulling the horn. I hooked the moonbeam. Beam was the source of the boss's shield, a light pouring through a crack in the ceiling. The line caught the glowing column, and the rod shook so hard my bones buzzed. I pulled the moonlight sideways. For one impossible second, the beam bent. The stag's shield tilted with it. I swung through the opening, landed on its back, and cast the line around both antlers. The stag bucked. I wrapped the line tighter. Crystal birds screamed. The whole labyrinth rang. I had no sword to stab it with. I had something funnier. I opened the mimic box. The mimic saw the golden horn and lunged. The stag panicked. I cast the mimic as bait. The hook caught the horn's reward identity at the exact moment the mimic's teeth touched it. The world could not decide whether the horn was still part of the boss, a treasure, or lunch. That confusion lasted less than a second. I only needed half. I reeled. The golden horn popped free without breaking the antlers. The stag stumbled, shield gone. Its rage collapsed into surprise. The dungeon recognized the horn as claimed. The boss lowered its head, defeated but alive. I patted its neck because I am not rude to animals that do not deserve it. The clear reward appeared. The horn fused with my rod. The silver line became gold at the edges. The reel gained a new groove. Amplification. When I cast after that, the hook did not just catch, it echoed. One hook became two, two became four, four became 16 if the bait was strong enough. That was when things got ridiculous. I returned to the city and tested it on a pile of common slime gels. One cast hooked a slime gel. The echo caught the drop identities of every slime gel nearby. I reeled once and pulled up a spinning tower of blue jelly that rose higher than the market stalls. It wobbled. I panicked. I cast again and caught the wobble. The tower froze. Then I sold the whole thing to a potion maker for more silver than I had ever held at once. Next dungeon was Bone Carnival, a nightmare circus under an abandoned fairground. It had skeleton acrobats, exploding clown masks, and a boss that threw flaming hoops while riding a bone horse. Players hated it because the enemies moved in patterns that changed with the music. I loved it because music was bait now. The first skeleton acrobat leapt at me with twin knives. I cast into the drumbeat, caught the rhythm, and pulled it off tempo. The skeleton missed the landing, crashed into three others, and turned into a pile of bones. My echo hook caught all their drop tables at once. Bone chips, mask shards, silver tickets, a rare rib flute. I tied the rib flute to the line and cast into the big top center ring. The hook vanished into the boss's theme song. The bone horse came flying out first, upside down, legs kicking. The boss followed, still holding a flaming hoop and looking personally offended. I pulled the hoop out of his hand and threw it back like a frisbee. He ducked. The hoop hit a support rope. The entire circus tent tilted. Skeletons poured from the seats. I cast the line into the falling tent shadow. Echo hooks flashed everywhere. I caught masks, knives, tickets, femurs, the boss's hat, the horse's saddle, and one skeleton's sense of balance. The whole army collapsed in waves, bones sliding across the floor like a white avalanche. The boss tried to activate his second phase. I hooked the phase. Not the boss. The phase. It appeared as a red spark forming above his skull, a future version of him with bigger flames and worse attitude. I cast at that spark, caught it, and reeled before it could settle into his body. The second phase came off like a coat. For one heartbeat, I held a burning ghost outline of the boss on my hook. The boss looked up at it. I looked at him. The ghost looked annoyed. I swung the second phase into the first phase. The explosion cleared the dungeon. That was the day bosses started becoming afraid of me. Not all of them, some were too stupid, some were too arrogant, some were slimes, and slimes fear nothing because they have no bones, no taxes, and no shame. But the smarter bosses noticed. When I entered a dungeon arena, some of them guarded their weapons, some turned their backs to treasure chests. One stone giant swallowed its own reward crystal before the fight started. That one made me proud. I cast into its stomach through its belly button and pulled the crystal out anyway. Gavin noticed too. I first saw Gavin at the capital gate of the High Zone City, but not in a political way. There were no nobles, no crowns, no speeches. Just a stronger city with taller walls, harder dungeons, and players who walked like they had already survived things that wanted them erased. Gavin stood near the gate with a group behind him, watching returning parties unload rare materials. He had pale hair, a calm voice, and a smile that made Trent's smile look honest. He carried no obvious weapon, which was always a bad sign. His gloves were black, and tiny chains wrapped around his wrists like bracelets. Serena had warned me about him. Not with fear, with irritation. Gavin collects people, she had said while reforging the reel. Not officially, not with rules. He finds talented players, scares them, offers protection, and if they say no, something bad happens in a dungeon. Sounds like Trent with better shoes. Trent wanted loot, Gavin wants control. I hated him immediately. He approached me before I reached the High Zone Inn. Dylan, he said, your growth has been entertaining. Your greeting needs work. His eyes flicked to the fishing rod. That item should be used for something larger than solo tricks. I looked past him at the players pretending not to listen. Some wore expensive gear, some looked tired, a few looked scared. I knew that look. It was the look people had around Trent. I like solo tricks, I said. Gavin stepped closer. His voice stayed soft. People who rise quickly fall quickly. I lifted the rod. People who stand too close to me usually fly quickly. For the first time, his smile thinned. He did not attack me in the street. Gavin was patient. Patient evil is worse than loud evil because it lets everyone else make the first mistake. His mistake was thinking I would wait. I started fishing for his shadow without him noticing. Not literally in the street. I was not strong enough to hook a player's entire identity from nothing, and I did not want to start a fight around bystanders. So I collected bait. Everywhere Gavin's crew went, fear followed. Fear has traces. A broken sword left behind at a dungeon exit. A healing vial dropped by someone who ran. A torn glove from a player who vanished into a gate and came back silent. I fished those pieces out of gutters, puddles, wells, and monster dens. Each piece pointed toward the same kind of drop table. Stolen courage. Forced obedience. Hidden chains. Again, not paperwork, not contracts, nothing boring. Gavin did not need signatures. He used threats, ambushes, and dungeon traps. He beat people until they followed him because he made refusing feel more dangerous than obeying. That made him simple. A man who rules by fear always carries the fear with him. I just needed a big enough pond. Chance came at Stormbreak Tower, a vertical dungeon built inside a thundercloud trapped between mountain peaks. Players climbed floating platforms while wind beasts attacked from every direction. At the top waited the Skyworm, a dragon-like boss that dropped a storm heart, one of the materials Serena needed to evolve my rod again. Gavin's crew entered the same day. So did Cole. Cole had been quiet since the arena match. He still wanted to beat me, but now he wanted to do it honestly, which made him less annoying. He caught me at the tower entrance and crossed his arms. Gavin is going in after you, he said. I know. He is not like Trent. I know. He will not just steal from you, he will make an example. I looked at his restored spear. Red lightning crawled along the blade, stronger than before. Are you warning me or volunteering? Cole grimaced like the word volunteering tasted sour. I am not joining you. Good, I did not ask. I am just saying if he jumps you, I might not stop him from falling. That was the closest thing to friendship Cole could survive saying. We entered separately. Stormbreak Tower was beautiful in the way a knife is beautiful. Platforms floated in open air. Lightning crawled through clouds below. Wind beasts with glass wings dived at me from every angle, shrieking like torn metal. I cast my line into the wind. The hook flew in a spiral, caught a gust, and reeled it into the rod. Suddenly I had wind bait. I tied it around the hook and cast again. This time the line did not fall. It rode the air current, looping through 3 wind beasts and snagging their wing drops without killing them. They spun away, confused and lighter. The rod's echo effect multiplied in the storm. Every cast split into golden threads, each thread catching a different pressure point. I hooked gusts, lightning sparks, feather shards, cloud moisture, and once accidentally, a bird's lunch. The bird was angry. I apologized. Halfway up the tower, Gavin made his move. The platform under my feet cracked. Not from the dungeon, from a black chain wrapped around its underside. Gavin stood on a higher platform, one hand raised, his wrist chains stretched into the stone like living snakes. His crew surrounded the nearby platforms, blocking jumps and exits. Dylan, he called down, you had many chances to be useful. I looked at the mile of open air below me. I am useful right now. I am giving you exercise. The chain snapped. My platform dropped. For 1 second, I fell through clouds, wind ripping tears from my eyes, lightning flashing above. Then I cast upward. The hook caught the concept of height. Height is not an item, it has no chest, no core, no drop table. But the tower had a reward for climbing. Every platform held progress. Every progress point belonged to the root. The rod found that claim and bit down. I reeled. The fall reversed. I shot upward like a hooked comet, blasted past my broken platform, and slammed feet first onto Gavin's ledge. His eyes widened. I swung the rod at his face. He blocked with a black chain. Perfect. The hook wrapped around the chain, and the real groove for weapon lit up. I pulled. The chain did not come free. Instead, it pulled back. Gavin's weapon fought like it was alive, links biting into the air. For the first time, I felt something resist the rod not with weight, but with ownership. Gavin's chains were bound to him by will, not just equipment. So I changed bait. I tied one of the fear traces to the hook, a torn glove from one of his victims, and cast into the chain again. The black links shuddered. Gavin's calm cracked. The rod did not pull the chain away. It pulled out the screams stored inside it. Not loud enough for the whole tower, just enough for his crew to hear. The chain hissed and voices spilled from it, short bursts, panic, pleas, the sounds of players ambushed in dungeons, forced to kneel, threatened until they followed. Gavin's crew froze because some of those voices belonged to them. I had hooked proof without papers. Gavin lunged. He moved faster than Trent, faster than Cole, faster than most bosses. His chains became blades, stabbing from 4 directions. I rolled under one, cast into a lightning bolt, and pulled it sideways. The bolt struck his left chain, making it twitch. I jumped, kicked off a platform edge, and cast downward into the storm. The hook caught a wind beast's wing drop. I reeled myself into a spin, flew around Gavin, and wrapped gold line around his right wrist. He cut it with a chain blade. The line regrew. He cut again. It regrew again. The golden horn's amplification echoed every cut into more line. Gavin realized too late that slicing a fishing line inside a thundercloud was just making smaller fishing lines. I flicked the rod. 20 golden threads snapped around his chains at once. He tried to pull me in. I let him. He dragged me toward him, chains ready to impale. I tucked my knees, spun, and cast the main hook past his shoulder into the black chain bracelet on his left wrist. Not the chain weapon. The source point. The hook bit into the bracelet's drop identity. I did not pull. I handed the rod to the storm. A huge gust caught the line and yanked with the strength of the tower itself. The bracelet tore off Gavin's wrist. Half his chains vanished. His crew gasped. Cole landed on a nearby platform at that exact moment, red spear glowing. He looked at Gavin, then me, then the torn bracelet dangling from my hook. I said I might not stop him from falling, Cole said. Gavin snarled and snapped his remaining chains toward Cole. I cast first. I hooked Cole's red lightning before it fired, just like in the arena. Cole's face twisted with old anger, but this time I shouted, "Trust me." He hesitated. That was all I needed. I reeled the lightning off his spear, multiplied it through the golden horn, and cast it into every chain Gavin still controlled. Red lightning raced down black metal. Gavin screamed as his chains locked up, rigid and bright, forming a cage around him instead of weapons. Cole stared at his spear, then at me. You stole my lightning again. Borrowed. You always say that. I always give it back eventually. The sky worm roared above us, shaking the tower. The boss had arrived because we had climbed too high while arguing. It descended through the clouds, enormous wings spread, body made of blue scales and storm glass. Its eyes burned white, its mouth opened, and thunder gathered between its teeth. Gavin, trapped in his own electrified chains, smiled through pain. You cannot handle both. I looked at the dragon, then at Gavin, then at the rod. Why would I handle both separately? I cast the hook into Gavin's chain cage, caught his remaining control, then cast the echo into the skyworm's forming breath attack. The dragon's thunder and Gavin's chain command connected through my line. For one insane second, the boss and the villain became part of the same catch. The sky worm fired. I reeled. Thunder breath bent downward, wrapped around Gavin's chains, and lifted him off the platform like bait on a hook. He shot upward, cage and all, dangling in front of the dragon's face. The sky worm stopped mid-roar, confused by the sudden delivery of a screaming human. I cast again, this time into the dragon's open mouth. The hook caught its storm heart. The dragon clamped down. Gavin's chain cage slammed into its snout. Cole shouted something rude. I pulled with both hands. The rod bent into a full circle. The gold line screamed. The dragon beat its wings, dragging the entire platform upward. Cole stabbed his spear into the stone and grabbed my jacket to keep me from flying away. Gavin yelled inside the chain cage. His crew ran. The storm heart would not come out, so I cheated in the flashiest way possible. I opened the mimic box and threw it into the dragon's mouth. The mimic screamed with joy. It bit the storm heart. The dragon screamed too. The world had to decide again whether the heart was a boss core, a treasured drop, or food. I reeled. The storm heart ripped free in a blast of blue light. The skyworm collapsed into clouds, defeated but not dead, its body dissolving into rain. Gavin's cage fell. I hooked it midair and swung it into the tower's exit portal. He landed in the high zone city square wrapped in his own chains, with stolen fear still whispering from the links. His crew did not follow him. Some ran, some dropped their weapons, some just sat down and cried because the pressure that had held them finally snapped. Guards took Gavin to the stone jail under the High Zone city. He tried to speak calmly, but every time he opened his mouth, my fishing line tugged the chain bracelet and another stolen scream slipped out. The crowd heard enough. Cole stood beside me as the guards dragged Gavin away. His spear had no lightning again. He held out a hand. I dropped the red lightning back onto his weapon. It crawled along the blade, brighter after passing through my line. Cole stared at it. It feels stronger. That is because my rod makes everything cooler. That is not an explanation. It is the only one you are getting. He almost smiled. Almost. The storm heart changed my rod again. Serena worked through the night, feeding the blue heart into the reel while lightning crawled across the forge walls. The rod drank the storm like water. The old wood darkened. Silver scales spread up the handle. The line became almost invisible until it moved. Then it flashed gold, blue, and silver at once. Serena stepped back, sweaty and satisfied. It can cast across dungeon borders now, she said. I held the rod carefully. How far? She gave me the kind of look people give someone holding a lit firework indoors. Do not ask that inside my shop. So I asked outside. The answer was far. Very far. From the High Zone City fountain, I cast into the water and felt the hook pass through layers of space. Not just rooms, not just walls. Entire dungeon boundaries became ripples. I felt chests sleeping in locked vaults, bosses pacing in arenas, hidden quest items buried under collapsed floors, and rare enemies wandering where no player had found them. The world became a pond. I should have been careful. I was not. I tied a storm feather to the hook and cast toward the strongest pull I could feel. The line shot into the fountain. The water turned black. The plaza went silent. A stone coffin erupted from the fountain and landed so hard every window rattled. The coffin lid cracked. A skeletal hand reached out. Death Knight sat up, looked around at the sunny city plaza, and slowly turned its helmet toward me. I waved. Wrong address. It stood. The guards screamed. Players scattered. Death Knight drew a sword taller than Serena. Dark fire poured from the blade. Its status marker showed that it belonged to a dungeon far beyond my current rank, a cursed mausoleum most parties could not even enter. I had fished it out because its drop table was strong. That was my fourth clever move, though to be honest it started as a mistake. The Death Knight raised its sword. I cast into the fountain again and caught the coffin's return path. When the knight swung, I yanked the coffin lid up like a shield. The sword hit it and stuck. I cast around the blade, hooked the dark fire, and reeled the flame into my line. The fire turned silver and blue, confused but obedient. The Death Knight pulled back. I pulled harder. The sword popped out of its hand and flew into the mimic box, which I had opened at my feet just in case. The mimic slammed shut around the sword and started chewing happily. The Death Knight stared at the box. Then at me. Then at its empty hand. I cast at its helmet, but the hook bounced off. Too high level, too much resistance. I needed bait. I grabbed the coffin lid, still smoking, and tied one of its broken chains to the hook. The knight lunged barehanded. I ducked under a claw, rolled across the plaza, and cast the chain into the fountain. The line vanished into the mausoleum it came from. The hook caught the knight's unfinished burial. That was not loot. But the dungeon considered the Death Knight bound to the coffin, and the coffin considered the mausoleum home. I pulled the concept of home like a rope. The Death Knight froze. The fountain became a portal again, showing a dark chamber full of blue candles. I ran straight at the knight. It reached for me. I slid between its legs, wrapped the line around its ankle, and let the mausoleum pull. The Death Knight shot backward into the portal, arms flailing, and vanished into its coffin chamber. Before the portal closed, I cast one more time and hooked the reward it had been guarding. A black bone ring flew into my hand. The plaza stared. A child hiding behind a cart whispered, "Can he catch skeletons too?" I looked at the ring, then at the fountain, then at the rods. Apparently, after the Death Knight incident, the city made one very reasonable request. They asked me to stop fishing from public fountains. I agreed because Serena threatened to hit me with a hammer. Instead, I found better ponds. The world was full of them if you stopped thinking water had to be normal. A shadow could be a pond for darkness drops. A campfire could be a pond for flame monsters. A bell's echo could be a pond for sound. A locked chest could be a pond for greed. A boss arena door could be a pond for panic. The stronger I got, the less I cared about distance. I could stand outside a dungeon and feel the reward currents running under it like rivers. Most players mapped rooms. I mapped desire. This made me rich. Then it made me dangerous. Then it made me a target for every stupid person with more greed than survival instinct. One crew tried to poison me at an inn. I caught the poison out of the soup, rolled it into a little purple bead, and dropped it into their water pitcher. Not enough to kill them. Just enough to turn their tongues blue for 3 days and make them confess to every guard they saw because the poison was truth venom from a snake dungeon. One thief tried to grab the rod while I slept. I had tied the fishing line to the doorknob. The moment he opened the door, the hook caught his attention and reeled him into a laundry basket. I woke up to find him folded between towels, whispering apologies. One arrogant guild tried to surround me outside a dungeon gate and demand a fair share of whatever I caught inside. I cast the line behind them and hooked the gate's entry order. They all entered the dungeon backward. The gate spat them into the final boss room without weapons drawn, and I walked in 5 seconds later eating an apple while the boss chased them in circles. I did not let them die. I caught the boss's shoes. It did not have shoes, but the rod interpreted shoes as movement, which was funnier. The boss tripped, slammed into a pillar, and dropped a rare gem. The arrogant guild apologized while still running. I accepted the apology and the gem. I was no longer the joke from the starter altar. I was the fisherman who broke dungeons without breaking rules. I was the guy who could pull a hidden boss through a keyhole, steal a dragon's breath before it fired, and make thieves deliver themselves to jail. That should have felt like winning. But power always reveals the next wall. The wall was called Abyssal Harbor. It was not a city, it was a dungeon the size of one. A sunken port under black water, filled with ghost ships, chain monsters, drowned giants, and a dragon boss that slept beneath the harbor floor. Parties had tried for weeks, most failed at the first shipyard. The few who reached the lower docks came back without weapons, without confidence, and sometimes without memories of the fight. The reward was the Leviathan scale, a material said to make any weapon evolve beyond its natural limit. Serena wanted it. I wanted it. Cole wanted to prove he could clear something with me instead of behind me. Gavin wanted revenge from jail, but jail wanted him to stay inside, so that worked out for everyone. Trent was still in jail too. I heard he and Gavin did not get along, which became my favorite mental image. Abyssal Harbor opened only during black rain. When the gate appeared on the coast, hundreds of players gathered under storm clouds, but very few stepped forward. I stood at the edge of the water, rod over my shoulder. Cole stood beside me with his spear. Serena stood behind us, not as a party member, but because she insisted on watching the rod's evolution condition herself. She carried a hammer and enough attitude to count as a siege weapon. You do realize, Cole said, staring at the dark gate, that if you fish up the final boss at the entrance, I am leaving. You say that like it would stop me. It would save me embarrassment. Serena tightened the straps on a supply pack. Do not pull anything larger than the harbor wall unless you have a plan. I looked at the gate, the black rain, the sea beyond. I always have a plan. Cole snorted. Serena said, no, you have 5 disasters stacked in a coat pretending to be a plan. That was also true. We entered Abyssal Harbor. The air changed first. Cold pressed against my lungs. The sky inside the dungeon was a ceiling of black water, waves rolling upside down above us. Broken ships leaned against stone docks. Lanterns burned blue along the pier. Somewhere far below, something huge breathed, and every breath made the harbor boards creak. First enemies rose from the water like sailors made of chains and seaweed. Their hooks dragged across the dock. Their eyes glowed green. Cole stepped forward, spear ready. I held up a hand. Let me try something stupid. That is all you do. Exactly, I am experienced. I cast into the upside-down sea above us. The line flew upward, pierced the black water ceiling, and vanished. The drowned monsters paused. The rod bent. I pulled. A ghost ship anchor fell out of the sky. It smashed into the dock between the monsters, sending boards flying. Chains whipped around them. The anchor's drop identity was tied to binding, so I cast again, caught the binding, and reeled sideways. Every chain monster on the dock got wrapped into one giant wet knot. Cole looked at the pile. I could have killed them. Sure, but could you have made modern art? He stabbed the knot with lightning, and the whole pile exploded into green cores. Teamwork. We moved fast. At the shipyard, drowned giants threw broken masts like spears. I caught the first mast midair, hooked its splinters, and turned it into a rain of wooden needles that pinned 3 giants by their sleeves to the dock. Cole dashed between them, lightning flashing, breaking their cores before they could stand. At the flooded market, treasure chests floated just below the black water. Most were mimics, some were real. I did not guess. I cast into the water and hooked honesty. Every fake chest hissed and tried to dive. Every real chest floated up, offended. Serena, watching from the back, muttered, "That should not work." I opened the real chests and left the mimics tied to a lamppost, where they bit each other for fun. At the bell tower, a giant bronze bell rang every minute and summoned waves of ghost sailors. Cole wanted to destroy it. I wanted to steal the minute. The moment the bell swung, I cast into the sound and hooked the next ring before it happened. The rod trembled. Time tried to slide away from the hook, but the upgraded line held. I pulled the future bell ring out as a glowing bronze loop. Then I threw it into the ocean. The bell rang underwater. Every ghost sailor in the next district dove after it like dogs chasing a ball. Cole stared at the empty streets. You just distracted an army with a sound. Yes. Why are you like this? Effective. Insane. Both can be true. The deeper docks were where the dungeon became cruel. Boards ended, stone steps led down under the surface of black water, but we did not drown. The water opened around us like heavy glass, forming tunnels through the sea. Outside the tunnels, enormous shapes moved. Fish with lantern jaws, eels with human hands, a whale skeleton with a cathedral on its back. I wanted to catch all of it. Serena grabbed my sleeve without looking up from the rod. No. I did not say anything. You breathed like you were about to make a terrible choice. She was learning. Lower Harbor had puzzle locks, but not boring ones. No codes, no papers, no fine print, just giant sea statues holding weapons, each blocking a path until players defeated the monster connected to it. I walked up to the first statue, a stone sailor holding a trident, and cast at the trident. The hook caught the monster tied to the weapon. A sea serpent shot through the tunnel wall, dragged by the statue's own trident identity. It crashed onto the path, blinking 3 eyes in confusion. Cole grinned. Now this is better. The serpent lunged. Cole met it head-on. Lightning spear struck scale. The serpent twisted, snapping at him. I cast into its fangs and pulled out the venom before it could bite. Purple liquid spiraled into a vial at my belt. The serpent choked on harmless air. Cole drove his spear into the ground, releasing a red shockwave. I cast into the shockwave, amplified it, and wrapped it around the serpent like a thunder net. The serpent dropped. The statue lowered the trident. Path open. It cleared 3 statues that way. Every blocked path became a delivery door. Every guardian monster got dragged into the open before it could ambush us. The dungeon's design still worked. We just used it rudely. At the 4th statue, things changed. The statue held nothing. Its hands were empty. No weapon, no obvious tie, no monster to hook. Cole frowned. So what now? I looked at the empty hands, then at the water tunnel, then at the rod. Something was stolen from it. Serena's eyes narrowed. Can you catch absence? I smiled. I caught height. I baited the hook with the bronze ring of future sound from the bell tower, because absence loves echoes. Then I cast into the statue's empty palms. The line disappeared. For a long moment, nothing pulled back. Then the rod bent downward so hard my knees hit stone. Something below the harbor woke up. Not the dragon. Something smaller but angrier. The line dragged a harpoon out of the abyss. It was black, jagged, wrapped in sea curse, and stuck through the ribcage of a drowned champion who had apparently been using it as decoration. The champion came with it. He was huge, almost twice my height, wearing barnacle-covered leather and carrying a second harpoon in his hand. His eyes burned like green flames. The missing statue weapon was buried through his chest, and he did not want to return it. He swung his spare harpoon. Cole blocked and skidded back 10 feet. I cast at the harpoon in the champion's chest. The hook bounced. Too much curse, too much claim. So I changed the target. I cast at the barnacles on his shoulder and caught their attachment. I pulled. Every barnacle on his body ripped free at once. Under them were glowing weak points, small green cracks across his bones. Cole saw them and moved without me telling him. His spear became red lightning, striking crack after crack. The champion roared and slammed Cole into the tunnel wall. I cast at Cole's momentum and pulled it sideways. Cole flew past the wall instead of into it, spinning through the water tunnel. He used the spin to throw his spear like a thunderbolt. The spear pierced the champion's knee. The champion dropped. I I ran in, tied the venom vial to my hook, and cast into the curse around the chest harpoon. Venom wants to enter, curse wants to cling. The rod found the similarity and bit. I reeled. The curse stretched like black tar. Serena rushed forward with her hammer and struck the line, not the monster. The impact vibrated through the hook and shattered the curse layer. The harpoon popped free. The statue above us groaned. The path opened. The champion, free of the weapon, dissolved into sea foam and dropped a green core shaped like an eye. I picked it up. The rod gained another tiny groove. Absinthe. That one made my fingers tingle. The lower we went, the more the harbor recognized us as serious challengers, not because it changed for me, because dungeons have layers. Weak players see the front teeth, strong players reach the throat. Abyssal Harbor's throat was the treasure trench. Thousands of chests lay scattered across a sea floor under black glass water. Some were locked, some were cursed, some were bait. Somewhere among them was the key to the dragon gate. Most parties spent hours searching. I cast one line. The hook split into hundreds of echoes, each one touching a chest, tasting its drop table and rejecting the trash. Common coin. Rotten boot. Cursed necklace. Exploding crab. Not that. Not that. Definitely not that. Then one echo screamed. The real key was not inside a chest. It was inside a crab, pretending to be a chest, pretending to be a rock. I respected the commitment. I cast the main hook at the crab rock chest and baited it with a piece of mimic tooth. The fake chest opened its fake lid and tried to bite the bait. The hook caught its lie. I reeled the lie out first. The crab turned into a normal crab, then into a normal rock, then panicked because it could no longer remember which disguise was real. While it was confused, I pulled the dragon gate key from under its shell. Cole stepped on the crab gently to stop it from escaping. Serena looked at me. You caught a lie. I prefer the term corrected. You fished deception out of a crab. The crab started it. The dragon gate stood at the end of the trench, two black doors taller than ships, carved with scales. The key fit into the lock by itself. The doors opened inward. A breath rolled out. Not wind. Pressure. The kind that tells your body to kneel before your brain can argue. Cole's spear flickered. Serena's hammer creaked in her grip. The mimic box shut itself and pretended to be ordinary luggage. I stepped forward. The arena was a sunken coliseum beneath the harbor. Black water formed walls around it, full of moving shadows. At the center slept the dragon boss, coiled around a mountain of treasure, scales dark blue, horns like broken ship masts, wings folded tight. Its heart beat once. The whole coliseum shook. Its eyes opened. The boss marker appeared. Not final, not secret, not impossible. Just stronger than anything I had faced. The dragon lifted its head, and I swear it looked directly at my fishing rod before looking at me. Smart boss. Bad day. It inhaled. I cast immediately. The hook flew toward its mouth, aiming for the breath before it became flame. The dragon snapped its jaws shut and turned its head. The hook scraped a scale and bounced off. The dragon had protected its drop identity. That made my blood run cold. It knew. Not because the dungeon changed, not because anyone warned it. High-level bosses have instincts. They understand danger, and my fishing line looked like danger now. The dragon slammed its tail. A wave of treasure shot across the arena. Gold coins became bullets. Chests tumbled like boulders. Cole pushed Serena behind a broken pillar and deflected coins with lightning. I cast into the wave and hooked value. The coins froze midair. For a second, I held the entire treasure wave on my line. Then I pulled. All the gold shot backward into the dragon's face. It roared, more insulted than injured. Good anger makes bosses sloppy. I cast into the pile of treasure behind it and caught greed. The hook came back wrapped in golden smoke. I tied the smoke around the line and cast at the dragon's front claws. The dragon resisted. Its claws dug into stone. I did not pull the claws. I pulled what the claws were guarding. The mountain of treasure shifted. The dragon looked back. Cole dashed in, spear raised, aiming for the exposed neck. The dragon was faster. One wing slammed down, knocking him across the arena. He hit a pillar hard, dropped to one knee, and coughed. Serena ran toward him. The dragon's tail swept at her. I cast at Serena's hammer. Not to steal it. To borrow its weight. The hammer flew from her hand into my line. I swung it like bait, and the hook carried the hammer's weight into the dragon's tail path. The tail hit invisible heaviness and dropped early, smashing the floor instead of Serena. She rolled clear and glared at me. Warn me before you borrow my hammer. Would you have said yes? No. Then no. The dragon opened its wings. The water walls burst inward. A flood rushed toward us from every side, full of ghost ship wreckage and bone sharks. I cast into the incoming water and hooked current. Too big. The rod nearly tore my arms off. I slid backward, boots screaming against stone. The flood kept coming. Cole staggered up and threw his spear into the line's path. Red lightning surged through the fishing line. Serena struck the reel with her hammer, stabilizing the pole. 3 people, 1 stupid plan. I reeled. The current bent upward. The flood rose over us like a glass ceiling, carrying sharks, ship pieces, and a very confused treasure chest. I swung the rod sideways and threw the entire flood at the dragon. The dragon braced. It cut the flood with its wings. Water exploded into rain. Through that rain, I saw the opening. The dragon's heart scale, one dark scale at the center of its chest, pulsing with blue light. I cast. The hook flew straight. The dragon twisted, protecting the scale with its claw. I smiled. The cast was fake. The reel's hook was an echo hiding in the rain behind it. The echo slipped under the claw and touched the heart scale. The rod connected. The dragon screamed. Not in pain. In panic. Every boss knows its heart is not supposed to be hooked before defeat. I pulled. The heart scale did not come free. Instead, the dragon's next phase did. Massive blue aura peeled off its body, shaped like a larger, more savage dragon made of water and lightning. The aura fought the hook, clawing at the line as it emerged. Cole's eyes widened. You caught its next phase. Trying to. Why? Because I hate surprises. Water dragon aura lunged at me while still attached to the real dragon. If it merged back, the boss would become stronger. If I pulled it free, maybe I could use it. Maybe. Probably. I had 3 seconds to find out. I cast the main line around a broken ship mast, wrapped the phase aura with echo hooks, and tied the dragon gate key to the reel. Keys open paths. Phases are paths. Close enough. I cranked the reel. Next phase ripped free and slammed into the arena floor as a separate water dragon, roaring without a body. The real dragon staggered, weakened. The water phase turned on me. That was unfortunate. I ran. It chased me across the Colosseum, jaws snapping, body crashing through pillars. I cast at treasure piles as I ran, pulling chests into its path. It smashed them. Loot exploded everywhere. I hooked the loot midair, turned it into a golden shield, and surfed down a broken pillar while the phase dragon ate the shield. Cole attacked the real dragon to keep it busy. Serena hammered cracks into the floor, making channels that directed the floodwater away from us. I needed to beat a phase that was not supposed to exist separately. So I gave it a drop table. I opened the mimic box and threw every rare bait I had inside it. Ember gems, crystal horn dust, storm feathers, the black bone ring, the silent wraith song, the crab lie, and a spoon because tradition matters. The mimic box chewed once. Then I cast the box at the water phase. The phase dragon swallowed it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the mimic started biting from inside. The water dragon thrashed, its form rippled. The rod vibrated as the phase gained a temporary identity. Hungry. Angry. Loot-bearing. Perfect. I cast into its chest and hooked the reward it should not have had. I pulled out a glowing blue orb labeled Phase Core. The water dragon collapsed into rain. The mimic box landed at my feet, burped, and spat out the spoon. I picked it up. You are getting promoted. The real dragon roared, furious and weakened, and launched itself at me. Cole intercepted with a lightning dash, spear clashing against claw. He was blown back instantly, but he bought me 1 heartbeat. Serena threw her hammer to me. I caught it with the line, swung it around the rod, and cast both tools together. Hammer for force. Rod for claim. The hook struck the heart scale. This time it stuck. The dragon dug every claw into the floor. Treasure swirled. Water rose. The entire Colosseum shook. My boots cracked stone. My gloves smoked. The rod bent further than ever before. The dragon spoke without words. Mine. The rod answered through my hands. God. I could not overpower it. So I stopped trying. A dragon's heart is too heavy to pull from the front. But reward identity is not always inside the body. Sometimes it is in what the boss is guarding. The Leviathan scale was not the dragon's heart. It was the reward after the dragon fell. The dragon had wrapped its life around that future drop, protecting it with pride, instinct, and greed. So I let go of the heart scale. The dragon stumbled from the sudden release. Then I cast backward into the treasure mountain. The hook, still carrying the heart scale's scent, found the reward behind the dragon's claim. The Leviathan's scale. The entire treasure pile exploded. Gold, gems, weapons, bones, crowns, and cursed anchors blasted into the air. At the center rose a scale the size of a shield, black and blue, glowing like the deepest part of the sea. The dragon turned. Too late. I reeled the scale into my hand. The dungeon froze. The dragon froze too. Its body began dissolving, not because I killed it, but because the reward condition had been stolen clean from under the fight. The boss had nothing left to guard. Its claim collapsed. Its rage faded into something almost like respect. It lowered its head as it vanished. The Colosseum cleared. The water walls opened. The exit portal appeared above the treasure mountain. Cole collapsed onto his back, laughing in disbelief. You did not defeat the dragon. You robbed the ending. I held up the Leviathan scale, efficient. Serena walked over, took the scale from my hand, and looked at the rod with shining eyes. This will change everything. The dungeon reward chest appeared beside us. Then another. Then another. Then 20 more, because apparently stealing the main reward before the boss died confused the payout order so badly that it coughed up compensation. I stared at the chests. Cole slowly sat up. Dylan. I know. Do not. I have to. No, you do not. I cast the line into the first chest. The echo hooks spread through all 20. Every lid popped open at once. Loot shot into the air like fireworks. Weapons, gems, potions, skill shards, maps, monster eggs, cursed rings, blessed rings, sea cloaks, dragon teeth, and one small rubber duck for reasons nobody could explain. I caught the duck. It squeaked. The mimic box trembled with jealousy. He returned to the coast under black rain, carrying enough loot to make the waiting crowd lose its mind. Players shouted. Guards pushed forward. Serena held the Leviathan scale like a holy object. Cole carried a sea cloak over one shoulder and pretended he was not smiling. For the first time since the starter altar, nobody laughed at the fishing rod. They stared at it like it was a legend. That should have been the perfect ending. It almost was. Gavin ruined it from jail. Not by escaping. He was not stupid enough to try while half the city wanted to throw vegetables at him. He ruined it by sending people. Not his old crew, they had scattered. These were worse. Desperate players, greedy players, cowards who thought if they stole the rod while I was tired from Abyssal Harbor, they could become the next terrifying name overnight. They attacked during the celebration at the Coastal Inn. I was eating stew, Serena was asleep with her head on the table, and Cole was arguing with a waiter about whether sea serpent tasted like chicken. The windows shattered inward, smoke filled the room. Players with covered faces rushed through the doors and ceiling at the same time. I sighed, not because I was scared, because my stew had been excellent. The first attacker swung a hooked blade at my wrist. I lifted my spoon. The blade caught the spoon instead. I cast the fishing line under the table, hooked the attacker's balance and pulled. He flipped over me, crashed into a chandelier and hung there spinning. Another fired a sleep dart at Serena. Cole moved first, knocking it away with the shaft of his spear. I cast at the dart midair and hooked the sleep. The tiny purple spell came loose like smoke. I flicked it back into the room. 6 attackers fell asleep, standing up and collapsed in a pile. Serena lifted her head, saw the chaos, and muttered, again. Technically, they started it. A player tried to grab the rod from behind. The rod did not like that. New Leviathan scale had not been forged into it yet, but just touching the scale earlier had awakened something. The line moved by itself, looped around the attacker's fingers, and gently but firmly tied him to a chair. I looked at the rod. The rod hummed. I decided not to question gifts. The remaining attackers backed toward the door. I stood, picked up my stew bowl, and cast the hook into it. Cole stared. What are you doing? Saving dinner. The hook caught the heat from the stew. I pulled the heat out as a red-orange glow, wrapped it around the line, and cast across the room. The warm line tapped each attacker on the forehead. Not burning. Just embarrassing. Their masks caught fire at the edges and fell away. The guards outside saw every face as the attackers stumbled into the street, tangled together by my fishing line and smelling like soup. One of them tried to run. I cast at his guilt. The hook caught something heavy in his chest. He stopped running and walked directly to the nearest guard with his hands raised, crying. Even I paused at that. Cole lowered his spear. You can catch guilt now. I looked at the glowing groove forming on the reel. I guess bad decisions have drops too. The guards took the attackers away. The innkeeper brought me another bowl of stew, free of charge. I tipped him with a sea gem because I was becoming terrible with money. That night Serena forged the Leviathan scale into the rod on the beach under the storm. She did not use a normal anvil. She used a flat black stone from the harbor dungeon, still humming with ocean pressure. Cole held the rod steady with both hands and complained the entire time. I fed the forge with storm heart sparks, ember gems, crystal horn dust, and the phase core from the water dragon. The scale melted into the rod like ink, sinking into wood. The line vanished completely. The hook became black at the tip, gold along the barb, and silver at the eye. When Serena finished, the fishing rod no longer looked old. It looked ancient. A new inscription appeared along the handle. Anything that can be rewarded can be reached. Anything that can be claimed can be challenged. Anything that can drop can be caught. I read it 3 times. Cole read it once and stepped backward. Serena whispered, "That is not a weapon anymore." I spun the reel. Somewhere in the distance, beyond the sea, something roared. I smiled. It never was. The next week became a blur of impossible catches. I fished a volcano boss's eruption out before it exploded and folded it into a fire cloak. I caught a haunted sword's curse, tied it into a bow, and mailed it back to the ghost that made it, causing the ghost to apologize and drop a rare charm. I hooked a treasure room from beneath a locked floor and reeled the entire room up like a carpet, chests, statues, traps, and all. The traps went off in midair, mostly hitting each other. I fished up a giant stone hand from a buried golem, used it as a temporary shield, then returned it by casting it back into the ground with a note scratched onto the palm that said sorry. I caught a boss's roar and stored it in the reel. Later, when a gang tried to ambush a group of new players near Mosswell Cave, I released the roar behind them. They dropped their weapons and ran into the guard station by accident. I caught luck from a golden rabbit monster for about 7 seconds. During those 7 seconds, I opened one chest and got 3 rare items, dodged lightning by sneezing, and watched Cole trip over absolutely nothing. He still blames me for that. Maybe he should. My reputation grew until it became bigger than me. People told stories I had not earned yet. They said I could fish stars out of the sky. They said I could reel in a dungeon from another country. They said I once caught a player's bad attitude and sold it to a potion maker. That last one was false. Nobody would buy Cole's. But the stories did something useful. They scared the right people. Greedy crews stopped attacking weak players near the main roads. Dungeon thieves started dumping stolen loot at guard stations before I found them. Mimics began closing their lids when I walked by, which felt respectful. Then the sealed gate appeared. Not because of me. It had always existed in the old map records, buried under the western cliffs, visible only when 3 high-zone dungeons were cleared in the same month. Abyssal Harbor was the third. The gate opened with a sound like a mountain taking a breath. Players called it the Rift Cathedral. Dungeon inside a broken space, full of floating ruins, gravity wells, angel statues with cracked faces, and monsters that dropped impossible materials. No one had cleared it in the current age. No one even knew the final boss. Naturally, I wanted to fish it. Serena wanted to study it. Cole wanted to pretend he did not want to come. We stood before the gate at dawn. It rose from the cliffside, a circle of broken white stone suspended over empty air. Inside was a sky full of shattered platforms and drifting bells. The wind smelled like rain, metal, and old magic. Cole looked at me. Are we doing this like sane people? No. I knew that. I do not know why I asked. Serena handed me a small metal charm shaped like a hook. I made this from the leftover Leviathan scale. It should keep the line from snapping if you hook something that hates existence. That feels specific. This dungeon feels specific. We entered. Gravity forgot us immediately. My stomach dropped, then rose, then argued with both directions. We floated above a broken cathedral floor, pieces of stone drifting like islands. Far below, clouds moved in spirals. Above us, bells hung from nothing. The first monster was a winged statue with a cracked sword. It moved when we blinked. Not a duplicate, not a copy, just a stone angel playing cheap tricks with timing. Cole blinked once and it appeared behind him, sword raised. I cast without looking. The hook caught the blink. For 1 second, Cole could not close his eyes, the angel could not move, and I had a tiny black bead of stolen blink on my line. I flicked it into the angel's face. It blinked. When its eyes shut, I hooked its sword, pulled it free, and kicked the statue into a gravity well. It spun away slowly, dignity first. Cole rubbed his eyes. You stole my blink. You were not using it safely. Rift Cathedral rewarded nonsense even more than other dungeons. Every platform had a different rule. On one, footsteps were heavy. On another, sound became solid. On another, lies turned into birds. I told the platform I was a normal swordsman. A small bird appeared, looked at my fishing rod, and died of confusion. Serena laughed so hard she almost floated away. It cleared fast because I treated every rule as bait. Heavy footsteps. I caught weight and threw it at a flying monster. Solid sound. I shouted into the line and reeled in a bridge made of my own voice. Lies became birds. I cast a hook baited with a fake treasure rumor and caught an entire flock, then released them at a monster swarm. Birds pecked the monsters while screaming things that were technically untrue but emotionally damaging. At the cathedral's center, we found a prison platform. Not a jail for people, a cage made of white rings floating around a crystal heart. Inside were players, alive but frozen, trapped from failed runs. No names above them, no movement, just closed eyes and faint breath. Serena went pale. Cole gripped his spear. Can you catch them? I stepped closer. The rings hummed, the crystal heart pulsed. This was not a contract, not a rule sheet, not some clever fine print. It was a monster mechanism. The dungeon had trapped their clear attempts and stored them like trophies. I cast the line at the nearest frozen player. The hook bounced off the ring. I cast at the crystal heart. The rod shook violently and threw sparks into my hands. Too protected. So I looked for the drop table. Every prison has a release. Every cage has an open state. Every trapped player was a reward the dungeon had stolen from itself, because dungeons are supposed to test people, not keep them forever. I baited the hook with the absence groove. Then I cast into the space where the players should have been free. The line vanished. The whole cathedral groaned. A white ring snapped. Then another. The crystal heart screamed like glass. Monsters poured from the surrounding platforms, winged statues, bell wraiths, gravity beasts, and floating masks with teeth. Dungeon was defending its trophies, not specifically reacting to me, just following the old protection pattern. Cole stepped forward, spear alive with red lightning. Finally. He charged. Serena swung her hammer into a bell, turning the sound into a wall that blocked the first monster wave. I stood at the center and reeled. One ring broke. Then another. The frozen players began to fall. I cast echo hooks into their shadows, caught their safe landings, and lowered them onto the platform while still fighting the prison heart. My line split into so many threads the air looked like a golden spiderweb. A gravity beast lunged at me. I hooked its down. It fell sideways into a bell wraith. A statue flew at Serena. I caught its sword's edge and reeled it into the path of Cole's spear. Cole struck, shattering the statue in midair. A mask bit my shoulder. The mimic box bit the mask. They both fell off me, arguing with their teeth. The prison heart pulsed harder. I realized it was not just holding players. It was holding their failed rewards. Every trapped person had been close to something, a boss drop, a key, a memory of victory. The heart had swallowed all of it. That made it a chest. A very rude chest. I tied the Dragon Gate key, the phase core, and the black bone ring onto the hook together. Then I cast straight into the crystal heart. This time the hook stuck. The rod bent. Inside the heart I felt dozens of stolen clears, broken attempts, abandoned loot rolls, and trapped courage. It was too much to pull normally. So I did what I always do when the catch is too heavy. I made it chase bait. I opened the mimic box and held it up. Bite the shiny heart. The mimic trembled with joy. I cast the box into the crystal. It bit. The heart cracked. I reeled. All the stolen rewards exploded out at once. Weapons, cores, memories, quest items, and glowing rescue marks shot through the platform. The frozen players woke as the rings shattered. Some cried, some grabbed weapons. One punched a floating mask before he fully understood where he was. I liked that one. The prison collapsed. The rescued players were pulled out by the exit current, safe and shaking, while the dungeon path opened deeper. Cole leaned on his spear, breathing hard. You just robbed a prison. I prefer liberated treasure. Serena touched the rod's reel. It gained another groove. I looked. Release. That word felt different from the others. Not flashy, not funny. Heavy. Rift Cathedral's final path led upward through broken bells into a sky with no sun. At the top floated a platform shaped like a hand. On the palm stood a boss made of white armor, empty inside, holding a lance of blue fire. Wings of broken chains spread from its back. It did not speak. It pointed the lance at us. The air became judgment. Cole stepped beside me. Serena moved to the other side, hammer raised. I shook my hands once and cast the line. The boss cut it. The line regrew. It cut again. The line regrew slower. This boss was not protecting a single reward. It was cutting claim itself. Every slash severed connections, canceled paths, and broke momentum. My hook could find a path, but its lance erased paths. Finally, a boss that felt like a problem. The first charge nearly ended us. Crossed the platform in a blink, lance aimed at my chest. Cole intercepted, spear meeting lance. Red lightning and blue fire exploded. Cole flew backward, armor smoking but still conscious. I cast at the boss's wing chains. The hook caught one broken link. I pulled. Link came free, but the boss did not stumble. Instead, the link became a blue blade in midair and shot toward my face. I ducked. It carved a line through the platform. So its broken chains were weapons too. Good to know. Serena slammed her hammer into the floor, sending cracks toward the boss. The cracks glowed, turning into metal ridges. The boss leapt, avoiding them, and raised its lance for a downward strike. I cast at the crack pattern, caught Serena's force, and amplified it through the horn groove. The metal ridges shot upward like giant hooks. They caught the boss's wing chains and held it for half a second. I cast at its lance. The hook bounced. The lance erased the path. So I cast at the space behind the lance. The boss hesitated. It knew I was not aiming for the weapon. I was aiming for the reward the weapon denied. Every cutting weapon has a satisfaction point. The moment after it severs something, a clean cut is its drop. I hooked that future satisfaction and pulled it early. The lance flashed. It fired its own cutting power before the boss swung, slicing empty air. For the first time, the boss's stance opened. Cole dashed in. His spear hit the chest armor with a thunder crack. The boss slid back, not damaged enough, but moved. Serena shouted again. The boss raised the lance. I caught the future cut again. It fired early again. Cole struck again. The boss adapted by not using the lance. It kicked Cole in the stomach so hard he flew off the platform. I cast after him instantly and hooked his fall. Cole dangled in midair, furious and embarrassed. Do not say anything, he yelled. I was going to say nice landing. Do not. I reeled him back while dodging chain blades. The boss rushed Serena. She blocked with her hammer, sparks flying, boots grinding backward. She was not a frontline fighter, but she had forged weapons long enough to understand impact. She shifted the hammer angle and sent the lance strike into the floor. I cast at the impact. The rod caught the shockwave and threw it back. The boss staggered. Now the platform was full of loose claims. Broken chain links, early cuts, redirected impacts, stolen falls, bent lightning. The fight had made a mess. Mess is my favorite terrain. I cast the line high into the air and activated Echo. The hook split into hundreds of threads, each one catching a loose piece of the battle. A chain link here, a spark there, Cole's missed strike, Serena's hammer ring, the boss's cut, my own dodges. Every failed moment became bait. Then I reeled them together. A giant golden lure formed above us, made of every action the boss had denied. The boss looked up. For an empty armor monster, it looked worried. I cast the giant lure at its chest. The boss stabbed it with the lance. Exactly. Lure exploded into threads, wrapping the lance, chains, wings, and armor all at once. The boss cut half of them. The other half regrew through amplification. It cut again. More threads formed from the cuts. The more it denied, the more claim it created. That was the trap. I could not beat a path-cutting boss with a single path. So I buried it in too many. Cole understood before I shouted. He poured all his red lightning into my line. Serena struck the reel with her hammer, driving the rhythm steady. The rod became a storm web. I hooked the boss's empty center. Not its heart, it had none. Its purpose. The lance dropped. The armor trembled. I pulled. White crystal came free from inside the chest, glowing with trapped blue fire. The boss fell to one knee. Its wings crumbled into harmless chain fragments. The lance dissolved. The clear mark appeared. The reward was not a weapon. It was a compass needle made of light. The moment I touched it, the rod pointed beyond the cathedral, beyond the sea, beyond every dungeon I knew. A new groove appeared. Direction. The Rift Cathedral opened its exit. Rescued players waited on the other side in the cliffside camp, cheering as we stepped out. Some bowed, some cried. One tried to give me a sword as thanks, which was very sweet and completely missed the theme. I refused the sword and accepted a sandwich instead. The sandwich lasted 2 bites. That was all the peace I got. A thin black hook shot out of the fog behind the camp and pierced the bread right out of my hand. For one silent second, everyone stared at the sandwich hanging in the air. Then the fog split open and a whole crew of masked players came sliding down ropes from the cliff path, each one carrying curved blades made from dungeon bone. They were not monsters. That made it worse. Monsters usually attacked because they were hungry, cursed, or born with the emotional range of a bear trap. People attacked because they had already made excuses for themselves. Their leader did not get a name from me. He got a nickname in my head, Bad Decision. He pointed at the compass needle glowing against my rod and told me to drop it. He said they had watched the cathedral from outside. He said anyone who could open sealed rewards could open every vault in the region. He said I should be proud because my little toy was finally useful to someone important. I looked at my stolen sandwich. Then I looked at his hook. Then I said, "You caught the wrong thing." He laughed because evil people loved laughing right before discovering physics had voted against them. I flicked my wrist and cast my line at the sandwich instead of him. The hook kissed the bread, glowed gold, and pulled. The black hook that had stolen it was still attached. The leader was still holding that hook. His crew was still holding the ropes tied to his belt, because apparently they had rehearsed looking intimidating and skipped the part where they let go of each other. All of them came with the sandwich. The entire masked crew flew across the camp, like decorations yanked off a wall. They crashed through a stack of empty crates, bounced off a cooking pot, and landed in a pile so perfect I almost felt bad that nobody had painted a target under it. Cole nearly choked on his own food. Serena looked at the pile, then at me, then at the sandwich, which was now mashed flat but technically recovered. "Do not eat that," she said. I was not going to. I was absolutely going to. Bad Decision got up with blood on his lip and fury in his eyes. He snapped his fingers. The fog behind the camp thickened, and more masked players crawled out from between the rocks. They had been hiding in the cliff cracks, waiting for us to relax. Some carried sleep darts, some carried chain nets, some carried jars full of crawling black beetles that chewed enchantments. So that was their plan. Let us clear the nightmare dungeon, wait until we were tired, then swarm the camp and steal the loot. Not brave, not smart, but annoying enough to be dangerous. The rescued players behind me panicked. They were injured, unarmed, and still shaking from the cathedral. The masked crew knew that. They rushed the weakest people first, because cowards always believed cruelty was strategy. I stepped forward and set the fishing rod across my shoulders. The direction groove on the rod still pointed west. The amplification groove still hummed from the cathedral. The claim groove glowed like a hungry cat. And for the first time, I realized the rod did not just catch things with drop tables. It could catch anything that considered itself loot. Those masked players did not see people when they looked at the camp. They saw prizes. That meant their own greed had painted hooks all over them. I cast into the fog. Not at a person. At the idea they were chasing. Line vanished into gray air, and for one heartbeat nothing happened. Then every pouch, stolen charm, hidden dagger, and secret key on every masked player jerked toward me at once. Coins burst out of pockets. Poison bottles spun through the air. Rings ripped off fingers. A whole backpack flew open and poured rare stones across the dirt. The attackers staggered as if their shadows had tripped. The rescued players stared. Cole whispered, "You can fish greed now. I prefer selective evidence collection." A sleep dart shot toward my throat. I hooked its drop table. Dart transformed midair into the reward it would have given them if it worked, a sleeping victim. Unfortunately for the person who fired it, the closest available victim was him. He folded backward, snoring before he hit the ground. Beetle jars shattered. Black beetles poured out and rushed my rod, jaws clicking. They were enchantment eaters, nasty little things that could strip magic from gear. The masked crew cheered, thinking my rod was finished. I smiled and cast the line straight into the swarm. The hook came back with the queen beetle, a fat black bug with tiny gold horns and an expression like it had been woken up for taxes. The swarm stopped. I dangled the queen beetle over the campfire. Every beetle turned around, marched back to its owners, and crawled into their clothes. The screaming lasted longer than the battle. Bad Decision tried to run, I let him make it 8 steps, because 8 steps was enough for hope to become funny. Then I hooked the shadow of his mask and pulled. The mask came off with his confidence attached. He dropped to his knees, suddenly pale, suddenly shaking, suddenly very aware that everyone he had threatened was watching him. Without the mask, he looked less like a villain, and more like a man who had practiced his scary voice in an empty room. He still had one trick left. He grabbed a whistle at his neck and blew. A red dungeon gate opened above the camp. From it fell a monster shaped like a giant vulture made of rusty blades. It had chains around its neck and dozens of tiny reward crystals embedded in its spine, a forced summon. The masked crew had dragged a field boss here like a dirty bomb. The bird spread its wings, and the wind from them sliced 3 tents in half. The camp went silent. Bad Decision laughed again, weaker this time. He said nobody could arrest him if everyone was dead. That was when I stopped finding him funny. I cast my line into the open gate before the bird could dive. The hook caught the chain around its neck. The bird screamed and tried to fly down. I pulled sideways. Not back. Sideways. The red gate tilted like a door with a broken hinge. The bird missed the camp, slammed beak first into the cliff wall, and got stuck halfway in the stone. Its wings flapped so hard they shaved sparks off the rocks. I ran forward, jumped onto a crate, bounced onto Cole's spear shaft while he held it steady, then launched myself toward the monster's neck. Serena threw her hammer under my feet at the last second. I kicked off the hammer head, flipped over a slicing wing, and wrapped the line around the chain 3 times. The bird's drop table flashed inside my head. Blade feathers, rust talons, red gate core, emergency escape whistle, criminal summon brand. There it was. I hooked the brand. The brand came out like a burning tattoo ripped from the air. The bird stopped fighting instantly. Without the brand forcing it, it shrank from a murderous field boss into a confused dungeon animal with one bent wing and the attitude of an angry umbrella. I tossed it a piece of crushed sandwich. It ate it. Serena made the face she made whenever I solved a problem in the worst possible way that still worked. The cliff path guards arrived late because guards in every world had a special talent for appearing after the part where I almost died, but they did arrive. They saw masked attackers tied together with their own nets, poison users asleep in the dirt, beetles politely guarding their queen in a cooking pot, and a giant blade vulture sitting beside me eating breadcrumbs. The guard captain asked what happened. I pointed at the masked crew. They attacked injured players, used poison, and unleashed a forced boss summon on a camp. Bad Decision tried to speak. The beetle queen hissed at him. He shut up. The guards took them away in iron wagons. No long speeches, no clever excuses, just wheels, chains, and the beautiful sound of consequences rolling downhill. The rescued players cheered again, louder than before. I finally threw the ruined sandwich into the fire. Cole clapped me on the shoulder. You could have eaten something else. I was emotionally attached to a sandwich. It survived more combat than most beginners. Serena crouched by the captured red gate core and tapped it with her hammer. The core pulsed toward the west, matching the compass needle on my rod. That was not coincidence. The masked crew had not attacked us just because they were greedy. Their stolen summon brand, their fog charms, even the black hooks they used to steal from victims all carried the same tiny symbol, a circle with a bite taken out of it. I had seen that bite mark before. It was burned onto the sealed chains in my vision beneath the sea. The compass needle did not wait for us to sleep. It pointed toward a dungeon gate hidden below the cliff, where the ocean slammed against black rocks and the water rang like bells. Cole looked down at the paths. Serena lifted the red gate core. The rescued players were safe. The attackers were in jail. The camp had food, guards, and a blade vulture that now refused to leave because someone had given it affection and bread. So of course I walked toward the cliff stairs. Cole sighed. We are going down there right now, aren't we? I still need dinner. That is not an answer. It is if the dungeon has a kitchen. Hidden Gate sat inside a cave where waves rolled in and out like the dungeon was breathing. Old bells hung from the ceiling, each one covered in salt and monster scratches. They rang without moving. The sound went through my teeth. Serena raised her lantern. The gate was not red anymore. It was deep bronze, crusted with barnacles and black chains. The circle with a bite taken out of it glowed on every link. The gate name shimmered in the water. The Sunken Bell Dungeon. The recommended party count was 30. We had 3 people, 1 rude mimic box, and a blade vulture waiting outside because it refused to enter water after stepping in a puddle and accusing the puddle of betrayal. Perfect. Inside, the first chamber was not a room. It was an upside-down harbor under the sea. Ships hung from the ceiling with their masts pointing down. Water floated in long rivers through the air. Fish bones swam without fish. Bells drifted like jellyfish, tolling whenever a monster moved. The floor was dry, but the sky was drowning. The rod trembled in my hand like it had smelled a feast. Cole stepped beside me with his spear raised. What can you catch here? I cast the line upward into a floating river. The hook disappeared. The river bulged. Something heavy bit. I pulled and a treasure chest fell out of the water, smashed into the floor, bounced twice, and opened by itself. Inside was a pair of boots with fins on the heels, 3 blue pearls, and a spoon that claimed it could stir storms. I took the spoon. Cole stared at me. What? I asked. You ignored the boots. The spoon has confidence. Serena took the boots because Serena was practical and did not trust confident cutlery. The bells rang once. From the ceiling, ships dropped anchor chains. The chains moved like snakes striking from above. I hooked one, pulled, and caught the anchor's memory of sinking. The entire chain forgot it was supposed to hang downward and flew sideways into another chain. Soon half the ceiling was tying itself into knots. Bell monster rolled toward us on crab legs. Its mouth opened inside the metal shell, and the sound that came out turned the floor soft. Cole sank to his knees. Serena's boots stuck. I cast into the sound. Not the bell. The sound. The hook snagged a ringing note shaped like a silver fish. I yanked it out of the air and slapped it onto my lure. The lure became a noise bait. I swung it over my head and cast past the bell monster. Every crab-legged bell in the chamber heard its own favorite meal, turned at once, and stampeded after the lure. They ran straight into the tangled anchor chains and trapped themselves upside down, clanging so hard that 3 hidden chests fell from the floating river. I caught all 3 before they hit the floor. One had healing fruit, one had a coral dagger, and one contained a tiny angry shrimp wearing a crown. The shrimp pointed a spear at me. I pointed the storm spoon at it. We respected each other immediately. Serena refused to let me keep it. The second chamber was worse. A hallway stretched between 2 rows of sunken statues. Each statue held a bowl of black water. When we passed, the water showed a possible death, Cole getting skewered by a falling mast. Serena being swallowed by a chain shark, me being dragged through a keyhole by my own fishing line while the mimic box laughed. The hallway wanted fear. Fear had a drop table. I cast into the nearest bowl. The hook came back with my possible death, folded small like a wet paper bird. I unfolded it. The death tried to happen. A keyhole opened in the wall and my line whipped toward it, trying to drag me in, but I had already wrapped the line around a statue's wrist. The keyhole pulled, the statue pulled back, and the hallway accidentally ripped open a secret passage behind its own trap. Cole blinked. You used your death as bait. I prefer early testing. The secret passage led to a vault that was supposed to open only after the dungeon boss died. I could tell because the door had 7 locks, a glowing skull, and the dramatic attitude of something proud of being inconvenient. I cast into the lock shadows. The first hook brought back a key. The second brought back another key. The third brought back the locksmith's lunch from 100 years ago. The fourth brought back a tiny ghost who looked offended. The ghost pointed at the locks, pointed at me, and shook its head. I handed it the storm spoon. It opened every lock. Inside the vault floated a bell clapper made of blue crystal. Serena said it could upgrade the rod's rhythm if we survived long enough to attach it. I heard upgrade and stopped listening to the danger part. A monster burst from the vault ceiling. It looked like a whale skull with arms, dragging a curtain of drowned chains behind it. The mini-boss was not supposed to wake until the 3rd bell toll. We had robbed its vault before breakfast, so it took that personally. It roared and every chain in the room shot toward us. I cast the crystal clapper into the roar. The roar swallowed it. Then the roar hiccuped. The mini-boss froze. New clapper rang from inside its skull, and every chain attached to it started dancing to the wrong rhythm. Instead of striking us, the chains tied bows around its own arms. Cole lunged, lightning flashing along his spear, but I held up a hand. Wait for the drop. The skull whale thrashed. I cast into the space where its reward crystal would appear after death. The hook caught the future drop. I pulled. A massive chain harp ripped out of the mini-boss's chest, glowing with blue notes. The boss did not die. It deflated, suddenly much smaller, less cursed, and deeply embarrassed. It flopped onto the floor like a dead fish that still had opinions. The dungeon marked the mini-boss as defeated. Cole looked at the harmless skull thing. Did you just spare it because stealing the reward counted? I am efficient and emotionally unpredictable. Serena inspected the chain harp. This can split one catch into several echoes if the target has enough reward weight. That sentence hit my brain like dessert. Several echoes. A boss material duplication tool. A loot multiplier. A way to turn one ridiculous idea into 5 ridiculous problems for my enemies. I tied one chain harp string around my reel. The rod shivered. The amplification groove flashed, then branched into 3 smaller grooves that looked like ripples. I casted a pearl on the floor. 3 pearls came back. Cole took one careful step away from me. Logan. Yes. Do not become weird. I looked at the 3 pearls in my palm. Too late. The dungeon did not appreciate theft, music, or me personally. The entire upside-down harbor tilted. Floating rivers broke loose from the ceiling and crashed across the floor, turning the dry chamber into a rushing flood. Sunken ships snapped their ropes and drifted toward us like dead whales. The boss had noticed us. A bell rang from somewhere deep below. Not above. Below. The floor split into a spiral stairway made of wet brass. Water poured down it, but instead of falling, it climbed upward, dragging broken oars, bones, coins, and screaming eels with it. At the bottom waited the boss arena. A drowned cathedral of bells. The boss stood in the middle, chained to nothing and everything at once. It was a giant knight made of bell metal, with no helmet, no face, and a hollow chest where a black clapper swung like a heart. Every step it took shook the water into rings. Around it floated dozens of unopened reward chests, not as prizes, but as shields. The boss did not attack first. It rang. The sound reached into my inventory and tried to pull out everything valuable. My pearls trembled, the storm spoon spun, the compass needle shook. Even the mimic box snapped awake and bit the air, offended that something else was trying to steal. So that was the boss's gimmick. It looted the players. Finally, a monster after my own heart. Bell Knight raised one hand and 3 chests flew open. From them came weapons taken from players who had failed here before. A spear of frozen rope, a bow made of whale ribs, a sword that dripped black water. The weapons attacked us without owners. Cole blocked the spear and slid back 20 feet. Serena hammered the floor, raising a wall of coral, but the bow fired through it like the arrows were made of bad memories. I ducked under the black sword and cast at the nearest shield chest. The hook struck the lock. The chest bit the line. That was new. It pulled back. The Bell Knight turned toward me. I felt my rod try to leave my hands. The boss was fishing me. For one terrifying second, I understood what every monster had felt when my line entered the arena. Then I got offended. No, I said, that is my job. I slammed the storm spoon into the reel and stirred. The line twisted into a whirlpool. The chest tried to pull my rod away, but the whirlpool caught the pulling force itself and folded it around the hook. The boss yanked harder. The line became brighter. The harder it tried to steal from me, the more reward weight it fed into my catch. Serena shouted that the black clapper was the core. Cole shouted that the weapons were multiplying. I shouted that everyone should duck. Then I activated the chain harp string. The single line split into 3 echo lines. One hooked the shield chest. One hooked the stolen weapons. One hooked the black clapper's rhythm. I pulled all 3 at once. The shield chest ripped open and sprayed old loot across the arena. The stolen weapons froze midair. The black clapper rang backward. Backward sound is a horrible thing. It does not echo. It sucks echoes in. Every bell in the arena went silent. The boss staggered. I ran forward across floating chests as they spilled open beneath my feet. Gold coins burst like fountains. Old helmets tumbled into the water. A cursed harpoon snapped at my ankle. I hooked it, pulled its curse out, and threw the curse into the boss's hollow chest. The Bell Knight punched the ground. A tidal wave rose behind it. I cast into the wave and caught the top. Then I pulled down. The wave folded over the boss like a blanket. Cole jumped through the falling water with red lightning around his spear and pinned the black sword to the floor. Serena used the coral wall as a ramp, leaped high, and hammered the boss's wrist so hard the bell metal cracked. I went for the heart clapper. The boss knew. It opened every shield chest at once. Hundreds of stolen items flew at me. Daggers, chains, rings, boots, shields, bones, teeth, coins, cursed flutes, a frying pan, and one very confused rubber duck. The air became a junk storm. I could not dodge all of it. So I caught it. I cast the echo line into the storm and hooked the category called stolen item. The rod bent so hard I felt my elbows complain. Then every stolen item stopped in midair and turned toward the hook like iron filings to a magnet. The junk storm became one giant ball of loot spinning around me. I swung it. The boss got hit with every crime it had ever committed. Bell metal cracked from shoulder to knee. The black clapper swung loose. I cast one final time, not at the clapper, but at the reward it was holding hostage. The hook sank into empty air. Something bit. I pulled and a crown of bronze bells came out of the boss's chest. Not a royal crown, nothing like that. A monster crown, a ring of dungeon bells that controlled stolen drops. The boss collapsed into harmless bronze plates. The arena filled with clear light. Dungeon rewarded us with enough loot to make a merchant faint. Serena took the bronze bell crown apart and used one piece to reinforce the rod's reel. Cole got a rope spear technique that let his lightning turn corners. The mimic box ate 3 cursed coins and learned to burp smoke rings. I received the boss title no one asked for, Bell Thief of Thieves. I liked it. And we exited the sunken bell dungeon. The guards were still loading the masked crew into wagons. The blade vulture stood on top of one wagon, screaming at anyone who tried to make it move. The guard captain looked at the mountain of stolen items we dragged out behind us. I told him which pile belonged to the rescued players, which pile belonged to old victims, and which pile was cursed and should not be touched unless he wanted his eyebrows to start making decisions. He asked how I knew. I held up my rod. Everything had a pull. Everything taken unfairly tugged differently from everything earned. Stolen loot felt greasy. Earned loot felt warm. Cursed loot felt like someone whispering bad ideas into a sock. The captain used that to sort the piles. The rescued players got their items back. The masked crew lost the stolen gear they had used to hurt people. And the sunken bell boss core, which still pulsed with the bite mark symbol, went into Serena's work bag. I expected the day to finally calm down. The world said no. At sunset, a public challenge flare shot into the sky from the town below the cliff. Red sparks formed a fishing rod shape. Then a noose. Then my face drawn badly. Cole stared at it. That looks nothing like you. I know my chin is not that weak. Serena read the flare pattern with a grim expression. A group in town had gathered players to hunt me, not because I had attacked anyone, not because I had stolen from innocent people. Because I had embarrassed too many thieves, exposed too many ambush crews, and made dungeon bosses drop rewards before the dramatic death pose. Their leader had offered a prize to whoever brought him my rod. Again, no name from me. This one became Fancy Hat, because the flare showed a silhouette with the widest hat I had ever seen. I had a choice. Hide, run, or walk into town, carrying the rod over my shoulder like a lightning rod for stupid decisions. I chose the funny option. The town square was packed when we arrived. Players crowded rooftops, balconies, fountain edges, and wagon roofs. Most were just curious. Some were hungry for the prize. A few had the hard eyes of people who had already decided I was easier to rob than understand. Fancy Hat stood on the fountain with a silver rapier and a coat that probably cost more than my entire childhood. Around him hovered 6 magic cards, each glowing with trapped monster skills. He smiled like a man who thought style counted as evidence. He announced that my rod was a stolen exploit, a coward's tool, and a disgrace to real combat. The crowd murmured. Cole rolled his eyes so hard I heard it. Serena looked at the magic cards and whispered that they stored boss abilities. Dangerous, expensive, unstable. Fancy Hat challenged me to a public duel. No jail tricks, no guards, no running. He said if I refused, everyone would know I was nothing without surprise attacks. I stepped into the square. I accept. The crowd roared. Then I pointed at the fountain. But I choose the arena. Fancy Hat laughed. The square is the arena. No, the fountain. He blinked. I climbed onto the fountain rim, stood ankle-deep in shallow water, and cast my line into it. The hook sank through 2 feet of water like it had fallen into an ocean. Because fountains had coins. Coins had wishes. Wishes had dropped tables if enough desperate people believed in them. The entire fountain lit up beneath me. The crowd went quiet. Fancy Hat stopped smiling. I pulled. Glowing wish came out of the water in the shape of a tiny fish. I caught it in my palm. It wriggled once, then turned into a temporary arena rule. All stolen power returns to its source. I tossed the rule into the air. It burst like a firework. Fancy Hat's 6 magic cards screamed. Monster skills trapped inside them did not belong to him. He had bought them from hunters who ripped skills out of weakened bosses and sold them to cowards with nice coats. The Fountain Rule did not care about his excuses. The first card shattered, releasing a Fire Wolf skill. Instead of attacking me, it opened a tiny gate and flew back to whatever creature had lost it. The second card released a Stone Skin skill. It shot into the ground. The third released a Poison Breath skill. Unfortunately, the source monster was dead, so the skill looked around, got confused, and returned to the nearest person who had claimed ownership. Fancy Hat turned green. The crowd backed away. He stumbled off the fountain, coughing purple smoke. The duel had not even started properly, so his allies tried to help by attacking me from the crowd. One threw a chain, one fired a bolt, one summoned a dog made of knives. I caught the chain's intention and yanked the thrower face first into the fountain. I hooked the bolt's reward and turned it into a splash of harmless coins. The knife dog lunged. I casted its collar and pulled out the command word. Without the command, the knife dog sat down, wagged its blade tail, and looked very proud. I named nothing. I was tempted. Serena would have judged me. Fancy Hat wiped poison from his mouth and drew his rapier. At least he could actually fight. He moved fast, cutting the air into silver lines. Each slash left a delayed wound hanging in space. If I stepped into one, I would get cut a second later. That was dangerous. Also useful. I cast my line through the delayed slashes, weaving them like thread. Fancy Hat's eyes widened. He had made a net of future cuts around me. I turned it into a net around him. I pulled the hook. Every delayed slash snapped inward at once, cutting the buttons off his coat, slicing his belt, trimming the feather off his hat, and shaving exactly one dramatic lock of hair from his forehead. Not a killing blow. A humiliation combo. The crowd exploded. Fancy Hat fell into the fountain, his giant hat floating beside him like a defeated boat. Guard captain, who had followed us from the cliff, with the tired expression of a man realizing I was becoming a local weather pattern, stepped forward with several guards. He had seen the ambush, he had seen the stolen skills, he had seen the public attack. Fancy Hat and his helpers went to jail with wet boots and no magic cards. I fished one last thing from the fountain before leaving. A small golden lure shaped like a coin. It carried the wish of every beginner who had ever stood in that square, hoping to become strong without becoming cruel. When I tied it to my rod, the lure did not increase damage. It increased irony. I did not know how that worked, but I believed in it with my whole soul. That night, while the town recovered from the shortest public duel ever to involve a fountain, Serena installed the bell crown piece and the wish lure onto my rod. The old wood changed again. It still looked like a cheap fishing rod at first glance, because the universe loved commitment to the joke. But now the reel had bronze rings, the hook had a coin glow, and the line disappeared whenever I looked directly at it. Serena said the rod could now cast through ownership, reward weight, direction, rhythm, and irony. Cole asked what irony did. I cast at a nearby empty barrel. The hook went in. A second later, the barrel spat out the boot of the man who had tried to kick it earlier and missed. The boot flew across the room and hit him in the back of the head. The man apologized to the barrel. Cole nodded slowly, terrifying. Before dawn, the compass needle pulled west again, but now it did not point to the sea. It pointed to a moving gate. Dungeon convoy rolled along the coastal road, pulled by 6 stone oxen. The gate floated above it like a black arch on wheels. Players called it the Wandering Gauntlet. It appeared near towns, accepted challengers, swallowed parties, and vanished. If the challengers won, they returned with rare loot. If they lost, their gear came back without them. The bite mark symbol glowed under the gate. I did not like that. A gate that returned gear, but not players, sounded like a monster, pretending to be a game show. We chased it down the road. Cole rode one of the recovered horses from the masked crew. Serena rode another with her hammer balanced across the saddle. I rode the blade Vulture. That was not the plan. Vulture saw me walking, grabbed the back of my jacket, threw me onto its neck, and sprinted down the road screaming at birds. Its wings were still bent, so instead of flying, it ran like an angry umbrella on stilts. It was the worst ride of my life. Also the fastest. We caught the convoy at a stone bridge where several reckless players had already gathered. The gate's surface showed piles of treasure: gold armor, jeweled staffs, dragon eggs, enchanted rings. The bait was obvious, which meant it was working perfectly. A group of greedy players rushed in before anyone could warn them. The gate swallowed them. Their screams lasted 10 seconds. Then their gear came flying back out, polished, folded, and stacked neatly beside the road. No players. The crowd backed away. The gate shuddered, pleased. I cast my line at the gear pile. The hook caught a helmet. I pulled. Instead of the helmet coming to me, the missing player attached to the helmet came tumbling out of the gate, dizzy but alive. The crowd froze. The player crawled away, gasping that the dungeon had stolen his victory condition. It had trapped him in a room where he could see the exit, but every step forward removed one piece of his existence. When his gear was gone, he had nothing left to move with. I looked at the gates. The gate looked back without eyes. I grinned. That is a drop table. We entered. Wandering Gauntlet was a long hallway made of prize displays. Every wall held weapons behind glass. Every floor tile glowed with a different temptation. Take a sword, lose your voice. Take a ring, lose your shadow. Take a potion, lose the memory of who gave you your first meal. It was built to make desperate players trade themselves piece by piece. I hated it immediately. So I robbed it carefully. The first room offered a golden sword on a pedestal. A sign promised unmatched power to the first hand that touched it. Cole looked at me. I looked at the sword. Then I cast at the empty space beneath the pedestal and caught the hidden cost. The cost came out as a black worm wearing a tiny crown of teeth. It hissed and tried to crawl back into the pedestal. I stepped on it. The sword became safe. Cole picked it up, swung it once, and the blade turned into light. He frowned. I do not use swords anymore. Go ahead and use it as bait. He threw it down the hallway. Every trap in the next room attacked the shiny legendary sword instead of us. Arrows, flame jets, curse beams, ghost hands, and one falling piano annihilated the bait in 2 seconds. The path cleared. Serena stared at the piano wreckage. Why was there a piano? Dungeon culture. The second room was a banquet hall where plates of perfect food covered a long table. The starving players trapped inside sat on the floor, shaking. They had learned the food restored strength but removed a memory every bite. They had been choosing between hunger and forgetting themselves. I cast the coin lure into the soup. The hook caught the price of the meal. I pulled out a fat gray leech made of stolen memories. It slapped onto the table and hissed names in voices that were not its own. I amplified the line, caught the whole category of memory leech, and yanked. Leeches popped out of every dish like disgusting noodles. Cole stabbed them. Serena smashed them. The mimic box ate one and immediately remembered a stranger's birthday party, then sneezed confetti. The food became normal. The trapped players ate until they cried. I did not give a speech. I just stole 3 pies for later because victory needed carbohydrates. The third room was where the gauntlet got angry. It dropped us into a circular arena full of reward chests. The chests had legs. The legs had knives. Every chest opened at once, showing treasure inside, and rushed us like a stampede of greedy furniture. I had dealt with mimics before. My own mimic box sat at my hip, vibrating with offended pride. These were cheap dungeon imitations. It leaped from my belt, landed on the floor, and snapped its lid. The chest swarm stopped. My mimic box snapped again. The swarm bowed. I did not know mimic boxes had social ranks, but mine apparently had decided it was a king. I pointed at the gate deeper in the arena. The mimic box snapped a command. The chest swarm turned around and charged the dungeon door. Knives flashed, hinges screamed. The door collapsed under 40 angry boxes that wanted approval. Cole whispered, "Your luggage has an army now." I am very proud and very concerned. Beyond the arena, we found the heart of the wandering gauntlet. It was not a monster with claws. It was a giant prize wheel floating in a black chamber, each slot showing a different reward: power, fame, victory, escape, revenge, immortality, treasure. Round the wheel drifted the missing pieces of trapped players: shadows, voices, names, courage, memories, laughter, even the feeling of being hungry. The wheel spun slowly. Every time it clicked, one floating piece vanished into a slot. The players trapped in the chamber hung in crystal cages, alive but fading. The wheel offered me a prize. It showed the fishing rod upgraded into a divine weapon, shining brighter than the sun, able to pull dragons from the moon and treasure from dreams. For half a second, I wanted it. Then the coin lure warmed in my hand. A beginner's wish. Strength without cruelty. I cast at the divine rod image. The hook went through it and caught the lie behind it. The lie screamed. It came out as a golden snake with a mouth full of promises. I swung it into the prize wheel. The wheel cracked. The gauntlet roared not from a throat, but from every slot at once. Crystal cages dropped toward the floor. Cole and Serena ran to break them. I stood in front of the wheel as it spun faster. Each slot fired a temptation like a weapon. Fame became a spear of eyes. Revenge became a burning chain. Immortality became a cage shaped like my own bones. I cast the echo line. 3 hooks shot out. One caught fame by its staring eyes. One caught revenge by its chain. One caught immortality by the lock on its cage. I tied all 3 together and pulled them into the wheel at the same time. The prize wheel tried to process 3 impossible rewards at once. It jammed. Then it exploded into a storm of stolen pieces. Voices flew back to throats, shadows slapped onto feet, names burned into hearts, courage returned like a slap across the face. One player regained his laughter and immediately laughed so hard he fell over. At the center of the broken wheel floated a black gear with the bite mark symbol. I hooked it. The gear tried to bite the line. The irony lure flashed. The gear bit itself. I pulled it free. The wandering gauntlet collapsed around us, but the gate did not crush anyone. The mimic chest army formed a ridiculous moving bridge, carrying trapped players out across their own lids. Cole dragged 2 people under each arm. Serena smashed falling beams without slowing down. I rode a wave of spilled coins down the hallway while fishing lost boots, weapons, and one emotional support spoon out of the wreckage. We burst from the gate onto the bridge as the stone oxen crumbled into harmless rocks. The wandering gate dissolved. Dozens of rescued players lay on the road, alive, complete, and crying into their recovered gear. The crowd did not laugh at my rod anymore. They stepped away from it like it was a dragon pretending to be wood. That felt better than applause. The guard captain arrived again, because by then he had probably sensed trouble by following the smell of burnt treasure. He looked at the broken gate, the rescued players, the mimic chest army, the blade vulture, the piles of gear, and me holding a black gear that kept biting itself. He closed his eyes. I am going to need a bigger jail, he said. There are no criminals in this dungeon, Cole said. I pointed down the road. Several people who had been taking bets on how many challengers would vanish were trying to sneak away. They had also been collecting the gear that came back without players. Not officials, not nobles, not anything complicated, just predators with bags. I cast the line over their heads and hooked the profit they had made from disappearances. Every stolen coin, ring, and boot in their bags flew out and dragged them backward by the belts. They tumbled into a neat row at the guard captain's feet. Now he needed the bigger jail. By the time the sun reached the waterline, my rod had 3 new grooves, and my reputation had turned from joke to warning sign. People were no longer asking if the fishing rod could fight. They were asking whether they had anything on them it might want. The west pole sharpened after the gauntlet fell. The compass needle no longer spun. It pointed straight across the Black Sea, toward the chained gate from my vision. But one more signal rose between us and the ocean. Dungeon Tower had surfaced on a reef that had been empty that morning. It was made of dark green stone and covered in hooks the size of tree branches. At the top, a lantern burned with blue fire, sweeping the coast like an eye. Serena studied the tower from the cliff. That is a lure tower. Cole leaned on his spear. A what? A dungeon that attracts monsters, ships, and players by showing them what they want most. I looked at the lantern. It showed me a pond. A quiet one. No monsters, no greedy people, no cursed bells, just me, a rod, and a normal fish. I narrowed my eyes. Disgusting. The tower had to go. We reached it by stealing a boat from no one because Serena built one from broken gate panels in 12 minutes while insulting the quality of every plank. Cole rowed. I stood at the front. The blade vulture tried to follow from shore, hit one wave, screamed, and retired from naval life. The reef around the tower was full of hooked statues. Players, monsters, even animals, all frozen in stone with fishing hooks through their chests. The tower had lured them close, caught their desires, and turned them into decorations. The front door opened by itself. Inside, the tower smelled like salt, lamp oil, and lies. The first floor showed each of us a different hallway. Cole saw a path lined with cheering rivals waiting to admit he was the strongest. Serena saw a forge where every broken tool in the world could be fixed. I saw the quiet pond again, and this time there was a tiny fish jumping in the water. I almost walked toward it just to fight it. Instead, I cast my line into Cole's hallway. The hook caught the applause. I pulled it out. The cheering figures deflated into empty coats. Cole's ears turned red. I knew it was fake. Of course. Then I cast into Serena's forge and caught the promise of perfect repair. It came out as a silver nail. Serena snatched it before I could make a joke. That is actually useful, she said. The tower hissed. My hallway darkened, the pond grew larger, the fish jumped again, sparkling gold. I cast at it. The fish dodged. I froze. Cole looked terrified. Serena whispered, "Did something just dodge your hook?" My pride cracked like thin ice. The golden fish jumped again, making a sound suspiciously close to laughter. I chased it. Not because I was tempted. Because it made the mistake of being annoying. Hallway turned into a vertical shaft. Water flowed up the walls. The fish swam through air, around pillars, under stairs, and through holes too small for my body. I ran after it, casting again and again. Each time it twisted away at the last second. The tower wanted me obsessed. Fine. I could weaponize obsessed. I stopped casting at the fish. I cast at the fact that it was dodging. The hook sank into a ripple behind its tail. I pulled. The fish's dodge came off like a strip of golden ribbon. It tried to turn and smashed face first into a wall of air. I caught it on the next cast. The golden fish transformed into the tower's lure heart, a living bait core that could show targets their desire. It flopped in my hand, still smug somehow. I tied it to my line. The rod upgraded again. Now I could choose what the target believed the bait was. Cole saw my face and stepped back. No. I smiled. Yes. The tower boss woke on the top floor. It was a huge angler creature with a lantern for a head and dozens of arms, each holding a hook attached to a different desire. Wealth, power, safety, revenge, love, rest, control, escape. The hooks flew at us like a storm. I cast the lure heart. To the boss, my bait looked like the one thing it wanted most. A helpless player walking willingly into its mouth. The boss lunged so hard, it ripped half its own hooks from the ceiling. I stepped aside. It bit the bait. The irony lure flashed. The boss caught itself. Every hook in its own body tightened at once. Wealth hooked power, power hooked control, control hooked escape, escape hooked rest. The boss folded into a knot of its own desires, thrashing and roaring. Cole and Serena did not need instructions. Cole pinned the lantern head with red lightning. Serena drove the silver nail into the tower floor, locking the boss's shadow in place. I climbed onto the writhing knot of hooks and cast directly into the lantern. Inside it, I saw every person the tower had turned to stone. Their desires were still trapped, glowing like tiny flames. I hooked the category called Stolen Want. The rod screamed. The tower screamed louder. I pulled. Flames burst from the lantern, flooding down the tower across the reef into every stone statue. Stone cracked, people gasped awake, monsters shook dust from their hides and ran for the sea. A crab the size of a wagon gave me a respectful nod, which I returned because manners mattered. The angler boss shrank into a normal ugly fish with a lantern bump on its head. This fish did not dodge. I threw it into the ocean. Lure tower collapsed behind us, but Serena grabbed 3 hook branches, 5 desire crystals, and the lantern lens before it sank. Cole rescued a player who had been stoned so long he thought the current season was still spring. I fished the quiet pond illusion out of the rubble and put it in a bottle. Not because I wanted peace. Because one day I might need to throw peace at someone as a distraction. The coast had changed around us. Gates that had been hidden were flickering in the distance. The bite mark symbol kept appearing on cores, hooks, chains, and gears. It was not chasing me. It was not reacting to me. It had already been there, buried under dungeons like old teeth, and my rod was simply good at yanking teeth out. The final signal before the sea came from a cavern under the reef, opened by the collapse of the lure tower. Inside was a prison pit. Not for people. For boss rewards. Hundreds of glowing drops floated in cages, each one separated from the monster that should have carried it. Dragon hearts without dragons, goblin crowns without goblins, spider silk without spiders. Phase crystals, rage cores, treasure maps, rare pets still asleep inside eggs, all stolen and stored. At the center of the pit stood a black altar with the bite mark symbol carved deep into the stone. Serena's voice went cold. This is why bosses have been acting wrong. Their rewards are being harvested before fights even happen. I looked at the cages. I understood the shape of it now. Not a grand conspiracy with officials and secret rulers, just a dungeon ecosystem rotten with thieves, cursed gates, and people who learn to profit from things being trapped. The bite mark was not a badge of authority. It was a feeding scar. Something under the sea had been eating reward identities for a long time. And I had the only rod rude enough to pull them back. The prison pit sealed behind us. Every cage opened one angry eye. Rewards were not harmless. Separated too long from their monsters, they had grown wild. A dragon heart without a dragon beat like a bomb. A rage core without a body wanted any body. A rare pet egg rolled toward Cole and tried to hatch into his boot. He kicked it gently away. Absolutely not. The egg rolled back. I hooked it and pulled out the bad hatch timer. The egg calmed. Cole picked it up by accident and pretended not to care when it chirped. Serena gave me a look. No names, I said. The cages shattered. Wild rewards stormed the pit. It was the strangest battle of my life, which by then was a competitive category. We were not fighting monsters. We were fighting the loot they were supposed to drop. Dragon heart charged like a meteor. I cast at its beat and skipped it like a stone across 3 cages. Each bounce released a pulse that knocked back rage cores. Goblin crown tried to land on my head and make me command imaginary goblins. I hooked its authority and slapped it onto the mimic box. The mimic box snapped once, and 20 loose reward gems lined up like soldiers. A phase crystal opened a portal to skip the fight and tried to throw us into the lost screen. I caught its next phase, pulled it early, and forced it to evolve into a harmless decoration before it had a body. Cole fought a storm of weapon drops that had no owners. Spears, axes, daggers, bows, and chains attacked him in spirals. He grinned for the first time without pride poisoning it. He was not trying to prove he was better than me now. He was trying to keep up. Red lightning curved through the ownerless weapons, pinning them together into a floating wheel. I cast into the wheel and hooked the concept of unused equipment. Every weapon dropped to the ground and became loot again. Serena faced the rage cores. She did not dodge much. She walked forward with her hammer raised, smashing them one by one, while repairing cracks in the floor with the silver nail so the pit could not collapse under rescued rewards. Practical, terrifying, and somehow still annoyed at me for smiling during danger. The black altar absorbed the chaos. It opened. A boss came out, but not a normal one. It was a collector golem made from cages, locks, and empty reward slots. Its chest had hundreds of holes where drops were supposed to sit. Its arms were long enough to scrape the ceiling. In one hand, it held a chain net. In the other, a hook larger than my whole body. For once, a monster had brought a fishing rod to fight me. Cole laughed. Serena did not. The collector cast first. Its giant hook flew across the pit and snagged the storm spoon from my belt. The spoon shot away. I felt a personal insult, so deep it became fuel. I cast my line after it, but the collector's chain net unfolded and caught my hook midair. The net was made to trap reward abilities. My line stopped. The grooves on the rod dimmed. For the first time in a long time, the fishing rod felt old again. The collector pulled. I slid forward. Cole stabbed the chain, but his lightning vanished into empty reward slots. Serena smashed the net, but the hammer bounced off and rang like a bell. The collector had been built from stolen boss drops. It was resistant to loot theft because it was theft wearing a body. That was clever. I respected it for 1 second. Then I cheated harder. I let go of the rods. Everyone gasped. The collector yanked the rod into its hand. The grooves went dark. The monster lifted my fishing rod like a trophy. For a heartbeat, the pit went silent. Then the mimic box opened its lid. Inside was the second line. Back in the Sunken Bell dungeon, when the chain harp split my line into echoes, one echo had never fully returned. I had hidden it inside the mimic box because I did not trust anything that useful to stay obvious. The collector had stolen the rod. It had not stolen my cast. I grabbed the invisible echo line from the mimic box and pulled. The rod in the collector's hand snapped awake, not as a weapon it owned, but as bait connected to me. The collector had made itself the fish. I hooked the storm spoon first. It flew back, smacking the collector in the face with enough force to dent a cage door. Then I hooked the collector's empty slots. Not the rewards. The absence. The monster froze. Every hole in its chest pulled at once, hungry to be filled. I cast the lure heart through the echo line and made the bait look like every stolen reward returning home. The collector swallowed the illusion. Its chest slots opened wide. Serena saw the chance and struck the black altar with her hammer. Cole hurled the golden sword bait he had kept from the gauntlet, now cracked but still shiny, straight into the collector's core. I pulled the absence inside out. Hundreds of missing drops burst from the collector's body and flew to the cages they belonged to. The collector shrank with each lost reward. Its giant hook fell. Its chain net unraveled. My rod shot back into my hand. I cast one final time and hooked the collector's own drop table. It had only one reward. A black tooth. I pulled it free. The golem collapsed into broken locks. The prison pit lit up as every wild reward calmed. The dragon hearts stopped beating like bombs. The rage cores cooled. The rare pet eggs slept again. The weapons settled. The phase crystals clicked into stable shapes. The black tooth in my hand pointed west, toward the chained gate under the sea. I should have been scared. I was busy checking the storm's spoon for dents. It was fine. The prison pit opened a path back to the cliffside camp. By then, night had fallen for real. The rescued players from the cathedral, the players from the gauntlet, and the people freed from the lure tower had gathered together. Some were resting, some were cooking. Some were arguing with the blade vulture, which had claimed a blanket pile as its nest and refused all negotiation. The guard captain had sent 3 full wagons of criminals down to town jail that day. Masked ambushers, fountain attackers, gear thieves, and the people who had bet on vanishing players all rode away with the same stunned expression. It was the look people got when they realized picking on the weird fishing rod guy had been a poor life decision. I liked that look more than applause, too. He dragged the recovered rewards into the camp and sorted them by pull. Items stolen from players went back to players. Boss materials that belonged to unfinished dungeons were sealed for return. Dangerous cores went into Serena's reinforced boxes. The mimic box attempted to claim everything shiny and had to be bribed with a cursed coin that made it hiccup smoke in the shape of tiny skulls. Cole sat near the fire with the rare pet egg in his lap. The egg chirped. He looked at me. It followed me. It is an egg. It rolled with purpose. Serena sat on a crate, hammer across her knees, and finally attached the black tooth to the underside of the rod's reel. The wood creaked. The hook darkened at the tip. Direction groove, claim groove, amplification groove, rhythm groove, irony lure, desire bait, and echo line all pulsed together. For 1 second, the old starter rod looked like something that could fish stars out of the sky. Then it went back to looking like trash. I loved it. Serena wiped sweat from her forehead. It can now hook sealed reward scars. Cole raised a hand. I am scared to ask. I was not. Serena explained anyway. If a dungeon, monster, or player had lost something that should have belonged to them, the rod could follow the scar to where it had been taken. Not just loot, not just keys. The missing part of a fight, the stolen phase of a boss, the reward identity ripped from a gate. The black sea beyond the cliff was full of those scars. The chained gate under the water was not calling me because it wanted to fight. It was full of things that had already been caught. I looked out at the dark horizon. The rod pulled west so hard the line quivered in the air by itself. Cole followed my gaze. We just cleared 3 dungeons, broke a moving gate, collapsed a lure tower, freed a reward prison, and sent enough criminals to jail that the captain hates your name. That sounds like a good warm-up. Serena threw a pebble at me. I caught it with this hook before it hit my forehead. The camp laughed. For a few minutes, the world allowed it. That night, the camp celebrated. No crowns, no speeches, no politics, just tired people eating around fires, showing scars, and laughing because they were alive. Cole sat across from me, turning his spear in his hands. I thought being strong meant choosing the biggest weapon. I looked at the fishing rod resting across my knees. I thought being weak meant not having one. Serena snorted. You are both dramatic, she says while forging ancient dragon scale into a fishing rod. That is craft, not drama. The mimic box snapped at a sandwich crust. The fire popped. For a while, it felt finished. I had gone from the altar joke to the player bosses feared. Trent was in jail. Gavin was in jail. The thief crews were broken. The abyssal harbor had fallen. The Rift Cathedral had released its prisoners. Cole no longer saw me as a joke. Serena had turned a dusty rod into something that made reality nervous. But the compass needle would not stop turning. Even while I slept, the rod pointed west. Past the cliffs. Past the Black Sea. Toward a place no map showed. I woke before dawn and found the line extended by itself into the ocean, not cast, not pulled, just waiting. At the hook hung a single scale, white as moonlight, larger than my hand, warm despite the cold wind. Serena crouched beside it, already awake. Cole stood a few steps back, spear over his shoulder, trying very hard to look like he had not also woken up because he was worried. I touched the scale. The rod's direction groove flashed. A vision opened in the water below the cliff. Dungeon gate larger than a city wall floated under the sea, covered in chains the size of roads. Behind it moved an eye bigger than the abyssal harbor dragon's entire body. The eye turned. It saw the fishing line. And for the first time since I picked the old rod at the starter altar, something on the other side pulled back. Hard. The line snapped tight. The cliff cracked under my boots. Cole grabbed my shoulder. Serena grabbed the rod. The mimic box bit my jacket and held on. The thing beyond the sea dragged us 1 inch forward. Then another. My hands burned. The rod bent toward the horizon. The hook had found something with a drop table, so massive it felt like the ocean itself had become treasure. I should have let go. I did not. I smiled. Because everyone had picked legendary weapons. I had picked a fishing rod. And somewhere beyond the map, something impossible had just taken the bait.